Mm, there we go. Gordon, welcome to Late Night in the Midlands. How are you?
Hi, Michael. Are we on live right now?
We sure are, and I want
Oh,
to welcome you to the show. How you doing tonight?
oh, thank you. Well, I'll tell you, I'm sweating like a pig because Maine is supposed to have 3 80-degree days a year, all in the third week in August, and we're on our like 45th day of 85 degrees.
Wow.
And
Wow.
we're just not used to it. If we wouldn't live in Maine if we thought it was going to be like steamy and hot. Oh my God.
Yeah, well, it's been pretty damn muggy here too, but in South Carolina, I guess you expect that. But
Yeah.
but it has been torturous. The sun feels a lot hotter to me. I don't know how other people feel.
Oh my God. It's been more than a year since I've been on your show, which
It's been
and
too long.
can you notice the sound quality's better? For some reason my broadcast internet, which is from tower to tower to tower, went from 5 up to and 1 down to 10 up and 5 down.
Wow. Yeah, you sound a whole lot better. I mean, you've done pretty well in the past, but yeah, this sounds really good. So
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
So it's a pleasure being back on here with you. Since when do you think this last time it was? Was it in the spring of last year, or was it even before that?
Well, one of my guests told me it's been 2 years, and I can't imagine it's been that long. Or one of my listeners, I'm sorry,
Yeah,
said, yeah.
yeah. It's been a while, and so much has happened. Oh my God! But Planet X is definitely getting closer. It's definitely separating away from the sun a bit, and the brightness. You're right. I mean, you can't even go outside and take a picture without having this like being spoiled by ultraviolet. And people go outside and they just burn to a crisp from ultraviolet. There's so much light, and it's a different color. And I'm glad that you noticed that because quite frankly, a lot of people don't notice anything.
Yeah, I definitely notice it. And being here in Carolina, I mean, when you go out there, it's I know back in 2008, how it felt. It was hot here, but not burning like that. And now, if I
Right.
go and stand in the sun, I could literally feel the sun burning my skin.
Right. And so I wanted to tell you, last August 1st, I was on Robert Pepino's show on Revolution Radio called The Whole Agenda. And he decided to go into the music business. And his father had a stroke, and he was taking care of his father. He said, "You're the perfect one to take over the show." So I've had my own show every Friday night at midnight for 2 hours on freedomslips.com. So if people want, if they like what I'm going to be talking about tonight and they'd like to hear more of me, they can do that every Friday night at midnight Eastern time.
All right.
And then I started my own YouTube channel. So now my shows are being posted by my producer, Swami. Posting them on my YouTube channel, and that's growing a bit. And then I couldn't believe this. Have you ever heard of Josh Tolley?
Yes, I have heard of him. I'm not
Yeah.
sure.
So he wrote me an email and he said, would you like to be on my show? We'd really like to have you and Janet on my show." And I thought, well, who in the hell is this guy? And I found out he's moderated presidential debates on CNN, and he's one of the top 100 business advisors in the world. And I said, "Do you know what we talk about?" And he goes, "Oh my God, of course I know what you talk about." He goes, "The number one question that my listeners, when I ask them, what would you like to learn more about, they say UFOs, extraterrestrials, and the future. So we can't wait for you to come on." So we went on a show on June 19th, and he posted it to his YouTube channel on June 23rd. And tonight we're going to reach 250,000 views.
Nice. That's
So
fantastic.
yeah, and that's a whole new audience. That's people that had no idea of the metaphysical or anything like that. I mean, in a sense, being on your show is like preaching to the choir because you frequently have guests that discuss these subjects, but I figure he never did. He said this is the most unusual show I've ever done, so it's pretty interesting. So if you go to the Josh Tolley YouTube channel, you can listen to that interview, or you can go to, and that's with my wife Janet, and then or you can go to my YouTube channel, the Gordon James Gianni Noto YouTube channel. But
And Gordon, that's great too, because that's what we need to do. We need to get to these audiences that have been under a trance. Really, I'm not saying that his audience has been, but I mean, like you got your CNN, your Fox News audiences. And, you know, so that's what I ask my listeners to do is, you know, share this everywhere you can, because I want to reach more than just...
Now, you know, every time you do a search for my name, Gordon James Gianni Noto, my YouTubes where I've done interviews with you, the LMNM interviews, are real high on the list of YouTubes that you can watch. So I've noticed that there's a growing, you know, interest and association with the subject, and it's definitely. I mean, we're nearing the end days here, but I tell you this. I know that you made a comment about what you wanted to talk about tonight. We'll get to that in a minute. It's really interesting, but I tell you this, and you can mark my words. By Christmas, this will not be the same world we thought it was. It'll be so different that you can't even imagine what that's going to do to everybody. So, you know, when I start talking about what's coming, people really ought to be listening, because pretty soon you're not going to have a change. Like if you live in Florida now, if the president announces this in September, that Planet X, the rogue planets in the solar system, and people should go read Zeta Talk, and they read Zeta Talk and find out Florida's going to be under 850 feet of water, you think you're going to be able to sell your house in Florida?
No, not at all. And Gordon, I want to let you know, I would like to touch on these other things at some point in the show, but I want to, you know, wherever you think it's important, let's go there first. And I would have to assume you're talking about Planet X, aren't you?
Yes, definitely. It's been slowly approaching the Earth since it came around the sun in 2003. And I've explained to your show before that it's because gravity pushes. That's why it's not going to slam into us and cause a big collision. And, you know, like I say often, how many times have you heard astronomers meeting and saying, we've got to do something about this terrible problem of planets colliding and stars colliding? What can we do? You've never heard of a meeting like that, because they don't have to worry about it because gravity pushes. But it's a lie we've been told for 400 years, and everybody swallowed it except me. And then I found out I was probably right, you know, and there may be a little component of pulling with gravity, but most of it's pushing. So, you know, things are not what you've been told. They're not what you've been thinking. Now, you said that the subject of tonight's show is beings from other realms, extraterrestrials, taking over planet Earth. That was what you wanted to talk about, right?
I did want to know about that, because it was brought up by a listener that he heard you speaking about this, and I found it interesting. But Planet X as well. I mean, if we're going to be looking at some dangers in December, we certainly need to cover that too.
Well, exactly. And you know, I might have to come back to do another show real soon, because I don't even think I can cover all the changes that have occurred. And let's say I haven't been on your show in the last 2 years. It's mind-boggling what's been going on. But I'll start with the creatures from another realm, because I know that scares people. They're thinking, oh, my God, what is this guy talking about? We're doomed, or we're not doomed, or we have to go to war. We got to load our guns. I mean, what is this guy talking about, and what is going on? But I'm going to start back at the beginning. The creator was sitting there. He hadn't created the universe at all, and he said, geez, I can do anything, and I know everything, so what more is there? And then he thought, oh, if I wanted it to go to my own next step, how could I do that? And he got this really interesting idea. Create a universe, divide himself, herself, itself into trillions of pieces, set each piece free in the universe to evolve without remembering that it was part of the creator, and then have these different dimensions and these levels of consciousness that you could, when you graduate from one level, you would go to the next level. So that's what's happening on Earth. Let's call the level that we're on now the third dimension. And the fourth dimension is complete separation. So on the third dimension, you have complete mixing of selfish and unselfish people. If you have an unselfish family, you can almost guarantee they're going to have a selfish kid. If you have a selfish family, you can almost guarantee they're going to have an unselfish kid. And it's really to let all the souls on both sides of that equation to get familiar with one another, which you know, the unselfish souls have empathy and they care about everyone, and the selfish souls are narcissistic and think that only they are important and nobody else is important. Mm-hmm. So we've reached a point in this development where a third of the Earth, 30% of the Earth, is ready to graduate to a new level. So this new level is like the average person lives 1,000 lifetimes. So if you live 1,000 lifetimes, they're not all on Earth. They may be, but they're not all on Earth guaranteed. You could have been on another planet, and what would your body look like on this other planet? And what would you be doing on this other planet? But what happens is that the average person lives about 1,000 lifetimes. It's sort of like a soap opera, you know, and you got different plot, different players, different places, different times, but it's all the same soap opera. And after about 1,000 lifetimes, you suddenly say, like Jack Nicholson, is this all there is? And when you ask that question, like a secret door that you never knew was there opens up in front of you, and you see there's a fork in the road, you can either choose to be completely selfish, which 10% of the population, if you can believe that, 10% of the population chooses to be 100% selfish. Or you can be unselfish, and only 30% of the population so far has chosen to organize all their intentions and behavior around unselfishness. But then, guess what? The next level, the fourth dimension, there's complete separation. In other words, there are planets that are completely unselfish. There isn't a selfish person on there, and there are other planets where everyone is selfish. And so that's what's about to happen is the people who have chosen to be unselfish are about to have a graduation, and the Earth is going to be a fourth dimensional planet. So you could say, well, yes, we're going to have the apocalypse, and a lot of people are going to die, and the world is going to be changed forever, and banks and governments and religions are going to fail, and the economy is going to fail, and bankers will be out on the street rolling up their sleeves to grow vegetables if they want to eat. And you know, there's some attractiveness to that to some people. To other people think, well, I love my my Mercedes and my penthouse apartment, and I don't want to give that up. And if I had to give it up, I would die. So what happens to those people? Because you got 10% selfish, 30% unselfish, and you got 60% mostly selfish. Well, when everybody dies in this lifetime, and believe me, I don't care how you die or when you die, but you're going to die because you were born on a planet, you live on a planet, you're going to die on a planet. And 1,000 lifetimes is like nothing because, I mean, I think that you believe that we're eternal souls, right, Michael?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, so if you're eternal and you, let's say, come to Earth and you live, let's say you live to be 100 years old, how many lifetimes would you end up having before everything is over, you know, completely? So what's going to happen is that the Earth is going to become an unselfish planet after pole shift. Not right after it, but as soon as it gets to about 90% unselfish, the whole planet with everyone on it is going to become unselfish, and the last of the selfish will die out because they won't be able to handle it. How are you going to go scam somebody and lie to somebody if they can see right through you and they know you're no good? They know you're service to self. They're not going to put up with it. So you have 10% are going to die and go to selfish planets, which I love Nancy Lieder calls them prison planets, because every single person on the planet's as or more selfish than everyone than they are.
Aren't we on a prison planet right now? I mean,
no. This is a third dimensional planet where the unselfish and the selfish are allowed free will to do anything they want, and the mixing is where the education is. You see, to recognize. You know, because a lot of people put labels on people. Well, he's a narcissistic sociopath, or he's a narcissistic psychopath, or he's a criminal, or whatever. And to me, I've gradually learned over all this time that it really comes down to is a person oriented towards service to self or service to others. And that explains everything. Once I learn their orientation, then nothing surprises me. If somebody is service to self, and they're at the 100% service to self level, there's nothing they could do that would surprise me. Nothing. And so I don't need to know all these other little sub-labels from cultures and stuff like that. And so what's going to happen is when the people on Earth die, 10% are going to be reborn on planets where everyone is more selfish than they were. I mean, if you're a selfish person and you're thinking, well, I'm going to be in charge. Well, when you're reborn on this prison planet, guess what? You're not going to be in charge. You're going to be nothing, and you're not going to have any choice about it. And then the unselfish people are going to be reborn on Earth. That's the meaning of the meek will inherit the earth. And the other 60% that haven't made a decision either way, where are they going to go? Because the Earth is going to be a fourth dimensional planet, and they're not ready for the fourth dimension. So they're going to be reborn on other third dimensional planets as sea creatures, and that's a gift because they won't have feet or arms or hands, and they won't have possessions. And if there's anything where we all went wrong as a society, it's possessions. So this is really a gift to them, that in their next lifetime they might be born as an octopus, and as an octopus they only might live an hour before a shark eats them, right?
Right.
I mean, you know, so people talk about, well, you know, like there's certain religions, you know who I'm talking about. They say, well, when the judgment day comes, I'm going to be resurrected in this body, you know.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, that's what I'm waiting for. That's why I've been a member of this religion. But, you know, think about it. Like, I look at my body, and okay, I'm pretty smart, but now I've injured my hips and I have to walk with crutches. Now I took too many aspirin for the pain, and it did not say on the aspirin bottle, warning can cause blindness. So now I got wet macular degeneration, so it's hard for me to read anything. I have this close focus telescope. I can read a word or two at a time. Well, I used to read a 200-page book in 20 minutes. So, but luckily I have a sharp mind. But whether I would want this body to be resurrected and live in it forever? No. I mean, when you go to the car dealer and you have a 1958 Studebaker, do you want to buy a new 1958 Studebaker? No, it's 2015 and the 2016 models are about to come out. You want to go buy the best car you can afford, you know, right. And you don't want to buy some old wreck of, you know, that's the technology's passed it by. So that's what your body is. Your body is like you getting into a car. Your soul gets into your body to express itself. Well, about a third of the earth has reached a point where they're beyond that. Like, I've taught myself telepathy. I actually contact aliens to help other people, and then they say, you're not going to believe this, but some Zetas came into the room and I saw them, and they were trying to work on my leg, or, you know, whatever it is they say. And they say, did you have anything to do with that? And I said, well, I did ask them, and I asked them like an hour before they do that. And then these people are calling me up and going, you're never going to believe what just happened to me. And I said, I will, because, you know, they're unselfish people. I'm asking not for myself, but for other people, and their help. So there's a lot going on here, you see. And
Gordon, I often thought that, you know, plants and maybe sea animals were of a higher consciousness because they didn't have the arms, the legs, and all those things. And you know, maybe a plant don't have to move because it's so far advanced in consciousness that it could do what it wants to do. You know?
That's what's really interesting. You see, this is the process of, we're all creators in training, because the creator broke itself up into trillions of pieces. It doesn't want any of them to fail. It doesn't want any of them. So all of them are eternal, and all of them have to learn from scratch. So the first things they do is to ensoul a rock. Like, you might be born into where your body is a rock and you aren't moving anywhere, but you're just conscious that you're there, which is a big step. If you were unconscious before, now you're conscious that you're there. You feel the rhythm of the planet, the vibrations, you feel the weather and the temperature and the seasons, and you feel people walking on you, and you feel rocks crunching and moving, and you may break off of a mountain and roll down a valley into the sea. You know, all these things can happen. Then the next step is plants. So then you learn to feel. So now you're not locked in position exactly. You can't move that far, but at least you can respond to your environment. And you know, people everywhere know that if you're kind to your plants and your vegetables, you're going to get a better garden.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
And so they become conscious of feeling. Then when they're born as an animal, when they really reach the height of that, then they can be born as an animal. And the highest, most developed animals are the ones that are in contact with humans, like dogs, cats, horses. Any animal that has any contact with humans at all is a higher order animal that is ready to learn some new things. So that's where thinking develops. Now the animal can decide, well, I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do that. And then the next step for the animal is to make a choice. And people say, oh, animals don't know if they did something wrong. Well, you know, when you tell your dog, why'd you poop on the floor? Just look at his face. You know that he knows he shouldn't have done that.
I'll tell you what, Gordon, real quick. We just did a video, and I'm going to put it out. We did a video outside today. There was this little stick bug. I don't know what you call it. It was like a little stick. And this thing, it had like an ET-looking head. And it was conscious that we were around it. I mean, when I moved, its head turned and it looked at me and it was watching everything I did. And we videotaped this because people say that bugs have no consciousness, and I disagree. This one did.
Yeah, well, of course. And you see the highest rock, believe it or not, are the radioactive ones. And why? What makes them the highest development rocks? Because they're giving of themselves to help the environment. And the highest order plants can think, like a Venus flytrap knows that a fly landed in it, and it can close its little claws around the fly and eat it. I mean, if that isn't, that's a rock beginning to feel, a plant beginning to think, and then you have the animals who are thinking, but their next step is spirituality, and that's where the human race was designed to be an opportunity for souls to begin to, basically, putting it in simple terms so everyone understands it, follow the golden rule. In other words, before you do anything, ask yourself, would you like it if somebody else did that to me? And if you wouldn't like it, then don't do it. Do you know how much better, forget all these religions in the world, if everyone just followed that simple thing, you know, and we've taken individuation to every possible development. So people, you know, they're like, well, he's not like me because he's black, or he's not like that because he believes in this, or he believes in that, or he looks like this, or he sounds like that. You know, this is the time. I mean, all those differences have been developed to the nth degree. This is the time for everyone on Earth to say, what do we have in common, not what makes us separate. And the reason why is because the Creator wants each part of the Creator, and that's what we are. We are creators in training. Everything around you, the molecules in the wall, the molecules in the plant, the molecules in your body, they all know that they're molecules in a wall, a plant, or a body. They know that, and they chose that. And they're all creators in training. You talk about eternal soul, and the universe is 16 billion years old, let's say. How long is it going to take for a molecule in a wall to decide, yeah, I'd like to be able to move around. Maybe I could be a plant. You know, and if it's a good plant, then maybe it would develop to be able to be a good animal. So these are progressions, and it's all going on all around you, and that's why the Native Americans respect everything. You know, if they're going to go cut a tree, they thank the tree. And if they're going to go, you know, and you can put this in everyday use in your own life. You can go pat your car and say, listen, you're doing a great job for me. I know all you glass and steel atoms and you rubber atoms and all the other stuff that's in there. I know you all want to be here, but because everything likes to be appreciated. I mean, if I tell you that you're doing a great job, that makes you feel good. And if somebody tells me that, I feel good. And the same is true of even molecules and atoms in your car or your desk, you know. The Native Americans are really the only culture that I know of on Earth where they all have that respect for the life around them.
Gordon, I talk to my plants, I talk to my car. I always tell my car, come on, baby, you could do it. You know.
Exactly. See, and so there are many ways, different ways of putting this, but there's the fact is that only a third of the Earth has really woken up to this, and the rest are like in the dark. The 10% selfish, they don't care. The 60%, they're all going to get a chance. When the Earth goes to being a fourth dimensional planet, the last of the regular humans will have died, and they will be reborn. So they're not going to be dead forever, and they're not going to have the same body they have now. They might be an octopus, they might be a fish, they might be a starfish. I mean, there's all kind. It depends on what they're into and what would be their next step. Because after you pass away from a physical life, your spirit guides, and some of them are extraterrestrials, go over what you've accomplished in your life. What was your goal? What was your karma? Were you a good person? Were you a positive influence, or did you create all these awful distortions that now you have to balance? And so, there's a life review. But so, you live on Earth now. Well, imagine in another billion years, and now you've lived another 1,000 lifetimes. Would you want it to be on another planet like Earth, and you're just going through the soap opera over and over, or would you like to feel that you've really accomplished something? Would you like to be able to move objects with your mind? Would you like to be able to know what any other person in the universe is thinking? Would you like to be able to communicate with them? Would you like to use your mind and materialize things right in front of you? So you couldn't do that with your present body. So these people.
I was going to say, Gordon, I would love to do that, and I wonder now, how come we don't remember our past lives? How come, if we could remember this stuff, or do we only remember it when we go?
See, that's the thing is, most people, you got to realize that they have hurt feelings over, oh, she did that to me, he did that to me, I'm going to get even, or I don't like them, or,
right.
It's a veil that's there for your own good. And because you'd be so bound up in what you did. And the thing is, it's like a speed bump. Would you back up and go over the speed bump a second time? No. Nobody can change the past, including you. So why try? Why look over your shoulder? Look ahead. Move forward. So
I meant more of like the spiritual lessons that we've learned. I mean, do we remember those?
That's what the point is you do learn them. You keep them with you forever. It's like when you make a crash of banging stuff together and it sounds awful, the sound of that fades away. But when you hear a really beautiful bell and you ring it and it just rings forever, beautiful concordant sounds last forever. And the same way, positive things that you do, acts of kindness, they last forever. You take them with you from lifetime to lifetime. And imagine how burdened you'd be if you could see everything you did. But, an unselfish person says, damn, I really made a mistake. I'm going to try and be a better person, and I'm not going to do that again. Whereas a selfish person says, well, nobody saw me do that, so that meant I got away with it, so I'm going to do it again. See what I mean?
Yeah. And eventually karma comes around, don't it?
Yeah, so the thing is we're on the third dimension. We're going to the fourth. Well, guess what? The fifth dimension, all is one. All is one. So imagine that you choose to be selfish and you go to a fourth dimensional prison planet. Now you're on a selfish planet. You think it's easy for you to get out of that? You're just going to sit there and go, oh, geez, I made a mistake. I should have been unselfish. And then bingo, you're going to be on an unselfish planet? No way. You might have to have 10,000 lifetimes on that selfish planet before you would even get the chance because, maybe you try and help somebody. Somebody trips and falls and you reach down to pick them up and you're executed on the spot for it because you showed kindness. So, if you're talking about would you like to progress fast, well, the fast track is to choose to orient all your intentions and behavior around unselfishness. So now we get to extraterrestrials. Well, there's almost an infinite number of galaxies and planets and beings. So, of course, there's beings on these other planets. Do they all look like you? No, they don't. But do they have love in their hearts, some of them? Yes. And the truth is, on all worlds, not only the Earth, but in all galaxies, all third dimensional worlds, there are some bad, some ugly, and some good. And that includes on reptilian planets. You can't say, looking at any race, humans, reptilians, whatever you want to call them, there's some worlds where the most evolved beings are jellyfish, and they can't build a spaceship, but they're telepathic and they're thousands of years old and they can contact other unselfish extraterrestrials and say, you know, would you come by and give me a trip? I'd love to meet you and travel around and see the universe. And that happens. So you have worms, worm people, jellyfish people. You got, you know, everything. I'm telling you right now,
I believe
everything you can ever think of is happening somewhere. Really, it is. And so, you know, there are a lot of beings. Well, if you've lived 1,000 lifetimes and maybe you've been on 20 other planets, well, guess what? Those people from those planets remember you. They're your friends. They want to come and visit you. Like if you send your kids to school and then you go and look in on them, you don't just send them to school and say, I hope they're doing a good job. Come back when you're educated. No, you go back and you go to the school, you meet the teachers, you see what the class is. Maybe there's something you can do to make it better. Or maybe it's really so great it's eye-opening. But the point is that a lot of the times when you have contact with extraterrestrials, they're your friends from other lifetimes on other planets. But they're conscious enough to remember it, but you aren't. But so now, you see, you're going to die one way or the other. This is the, you know, this life that we're in right now is going to end. I mean, there's just no way around it. And
it is going to end, and you know I've got proof that I'm not immortal already. So you know it's inevitable. None of us get off of this planet with our bodies or our possessions. I don't know, you know, unless you're an astronaut, in which you still have to come back. So
right, and so the thing is that each time you're reborn, don't you hope that it's in a better model car? I mean, it's, you know, you got a better vehicle here. Like next time, wouldn't you like to be telepathic and be able to ask anybody anything, no matter where in the universe they are? That'd be so cool, wouldn't it?
It would be cool. And here's the thing. Now, there are some people who actually do have those gifts right now. And
well, I have telepathy. My wife and I actually have conversations where we don't even open our mouth. Now, some civilizations, like the Zetas, they decided that emotions were wrong and sex was wrong. So they said, well, let's clone ourselves, and we don't even deserve to have our own planet. We ought to just live in space. So let's make ourselves small, and let's not have digestive systems, because you can imagine the problem of getting food in space. So they're thinking, well, why don't we just grow some green algae and paint it on our skin and get our nutrients from that? And why don't we just cut out sexual organs and sex and emotional nature and just make ourselves 100% telepathic and clone ourselves? That way we can reproduce without the sex, because, you know, sex gets you into trouble, then you have wars, then you destroy your planet. And that's what they felt about themselves. So they were sent here to study Earth. And they're studying it for a long time. And then all of a sudden their cloning started to fail. Well, what do we do now, they said. Geez, so you can't just clone yourself forever. And then they realized that they should check our DNA. And our DNA is 100% human. Well, guess what? Theirs is too. So those little gray aliens that you see that all look the same, they're not bees in a hive. They have individual souls in the body. It's just that under their system of cloning, all the bodies look the same. But one of them might be interested in history, another is interested in art, and another is interested in flying saucer technology, another is interested in music. So they're as different, but they're so telepathic. If somebody who's studying history wants to know how to fix a lawnmower, he can ask one of the ones that's mechanical who will explain it to him. So they go, well, what are we going to do now? We're fourth dimensional. Earthlings are third dimensional. Oh, but Earth is about to graduate to the fourth dimension. Why don't we start a breeding program? Now, where did we go wrong? Well, we use DNA to cut sex out. So let's find really sexual people. Let's find people who are really emotional and intelligent, because we don't want to dumb ourselves down. And let's breed with them and create a new race of hybrids, 100% human. And we'll create them on the fourth dimension. And when the Earth becomes a fourth dimensional planet, they can't see us right now. It's like when you're tuned to one radio station, you can't hear the radio station on the next frequency.
I see. So let me ask you this. So are they amongst us now, and is it that they're on a different frequency, so we don't see them, but we can? I mean, like the UFOs, sometimes...
Like my wife can see them. My wife can see fourth dimensional beings, and she has a wider visual antenna than 99% of everybody. She can not only see people on a lower vibration like dead people, but she can also see extraterrestrials on the fourth dimension. So they live in invisible domed cities on Earth.
That makes sense, Gordon, and I don't mean to keep cutting you off, but you've fascinated me here, because people see ghosts, some people see UFOs, and they disappear, and I'm thinking they get they get on the right frequency, and that's why we see them then.
Right, and so what happens is that the unselfish people have banded together to form a council of worlds. I mean, there's all kinds of people that say, well, there's this federation and there's that, world body and this world body, but the real name is the Council of Worlds, and they have taken extreme steps to protect the Earth because we're a school. This is a school where, can you imagine if the universe is 16 billion years old and the Earth is only 4 billion years old, which that's just approximate, but imagine that the universe, how many places in the universe there are civilizations, and I'll tell you what happened. Some of these civilizations, nothing has changed in 100,000 years. Let's say they have slavery, or let's say they're all men and they can reproduce and have babies that are male babies, and there's planets where females can reproduce. I mean, you've heard of like a shark in a tank, and it doesn't even have a mate, and all of a sudden it has a baby. You're like, how did that happen?
Yeah.
I mean, I've gone to ponds that were created and fenced off because they were like a sedimentation pond, and you go back and there's fish in there. Where'd they come from? It's really interesting, like what goes on, that, some of which was arranged and some of which is just the force of nature itself. But the thing is that this new body, that's this new hybrid race, it's 100% human, and it isn't aliens or people from another realm taking over. Guess who's going to reincarnate into those bodies? Not only the unselfish zetas, but also the unselfish humans. And we're going to live 400 years in these new bodies. Now, our bodies were created by the Anunnaki on Planet X to be gold mining slaves, so that we were intentionally created defective. One defect is the pineal gland is atrophied, so you don't even know about the higher self. You can't tune in on the eternal soul because you don't have the equipment to do it. You do have an eternal soul, but your physical body was intentionally created defective so you would be a good slave. Those are the bodies that we're living in. Well, the new bodies, people are going to live 400 years. They're going to be completely telepathic with every other universe on the being on the fourth dimension. They're going to be have IQs of 300. They're going to be really sexual, emotional. They're going to be doing all the things that humans do now, except the stupid stuff. So they're going to play music. They're going to work with color and art. They're going to build spaceships. And in 1,000 years, this new hybrid race will be known as humans from Earth. And they will build a fleet of spaceships, and they will go out into the universe and all these other worlds where not a single thing has changed in 1,000,000 years. Maybe they've had slaves for 1,000,000 years, and they decided 1,000,000 years ago slaves are good. You're a minion. You're worth nothing. I'm going to control you because I'm part of the elite, so I own you. And they've never even considered changing that. And we're going to land on their planets, and we're going to say, oh boy, we know what's wrong here, and this is how you fix it. And how are we going to know how to fix it? It's because every problem anyone has ever had anywhere in the universe has been occurring on Earth, and that's why it's so hard. When a good person gets something really good going along, and then a selfish person comes along and screws it up, it's like, oh, God, And the selfish people, that's all they do. They've got to turn everything for themselves. They manipulate everything so that they create loopholes, and nothing's black and white anymore. It's gray. And you know what selfish people do.
Yeah, absolutely. And Gordon, one of our listeners asked, how did you know all this? And it's because you're an abductee. Is that right?
Well, no,
I'm not an abductee, a contactee.
No, I was. See, abducted makes it sound like you were voluntarily taken.
Well, yeah, I meant contactee.
Right. What happened is, as a child, my father was a Catholic, and he was kicked out of the church, and he thought, well, how could God kick you out of church? So before I was born, he goes, well, I'm going to study everything then. The hell with the church. And of course, I'm talking about the Catholic Church. So he started getting books on telepathy, reincarnation, psychics, astrology, dimensions, masters, all this stuff. And that's the literature that I grew up with. He was a member of the ARE in Virginia and Virginia Beach, Edgar Cayce group. And I was reading this stuff as a kid, and I read, well, pole shift is going to happen sometime between 68 and 98. And I'm like, I just have always had this quality. When somebody tells me something, I can either immediately or soon thereafter, I can feel in my heart whether it's true. I just had that ability. So the first time that I read about people contacting extraterrestrials, I wasn't like most people and said, oh, I wonder if there's any more proofs of that. I wonder if there's any scratches on the driveway, or, I just never thought that. What I thought was, wow, if they could contact ETs, I want to too. And I knew there was the good, the bad, and the ugly out there. So I figured, who wants to contact the bad or who wants to contact the ugly? So let's contact the good. So I intentionally asked, and in 1968, I said, I'm going to teach myself telepathy. So every night that it was clear, I would go for a walk outside and look up at the stars, and I'd say, no, you're there. I want you to contact me. I'm pretty sure you can hear me. It's just I can't hear you. And then 20 years later, in 1988, a 150-foot disc came from the Pleiades. Before they zoomed in across the sky like a meteor and then slowed down above my car, they said, we're coming on a ship to take you on board. And I thought, oh my God, this is a dream come true. And it still probably is the most exciting thing that ever happened to me. Imagine you want to teach yourself telepathy, and that's where it was a Pleiadian ship, and they're human. And they could walk down any street and you would not know they're from another planet. And they took me on board, and they told me I'm a reincarnated Pleiadian. I spent lifetimes in the Pleiades. And I also think that I also reached the fourth dimension, the next dimension up, but I volunteered to come back to Earth to help slant this whole experiment towards success. And so that's how. And you for your listeners' question, the aliens have unified brains. So for them, their subconscious, their conscious, and their superconscious is all one. But humans don't. Humans have a subconscious, a conscious, and a superconscious that are completely separate, like the Three Stooges that just don't work together. So when an alien comes through the wall for one of those people, the subconscious says, I know love hurts, so how are you going to hurt me? The conscious says, whoa, I know that can't be legal coming through the wall, and if I get a chance, I'm going to report you because I don't know what you're trying to do with me, but it isn't right, and I wasn't told in school that this could happen, and I don't understand it. And so if I could remember this enough to tell the police, I'm going to report you. I'm going to have you arrested. And then the superconscious part of the human says, well, I know we're all brothers and sisters. We're all creators in training. How can I help you? So when people say, there's a conference going on in August in Portland, Maine, that's going to be all about the horrors of abduction. But I've been to lots of UFO conference, and I see these abduction counselors, and they're like, oh yes, it's a horrible thing how you were abused, and if you spend enough money with me, I can help you with your post-traumatic stress.
But in all fairness, there are some people who feel like it was trauma. Most of the people I talk to, though, don't seem traumatized. Most of them seem like there was a purpose for it all.
Right. Well, that's the thing. See, I had a UFO group in Bangor, Janet and I did, for 18 years. We met once a month, and we had up to 30 people at a time in there. And there were lots of people that said, "Oh, I was abducted and it was terrible," you know. Well, watch them over the years and look at what happened to them. Well, they've become more psychic. They've become more caring. They're more interested in the earth and the future of the earth. They're more interested in animals and plants. They seem like they're nicer people. They're better adjusted. I mean, where's the problem, you know?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So, so basically, as a human race, then there is the fourth dimension. You say that we will graduate to, and then who's taking over this third dimension? Who exactly is doing that?
Well, the Earth will become a fourth dimensional planet, so it won't be third
Oh,
dimension.
okay.
So it'll only be unselfish people, and there'll be open contact with ETs from all over the universe. You might meet some of those jellyfish or worms, or you know, all kinds of beings, and you'll be in telepathic contact with them. So you might see, because you know, don't judge a book by its cover. You might look at it and go, well, that's a jellyfish. What could it know? And you know, but actually, it might know a lot more than you, because it might be 1,000 years old, and you're
You
young.
know, Gordon, I'm one of those people who are amazed by all life, plant life, animals, insects. I'm not a big bug fan, but I'm still amazed by them. So,
Exactly, and you know, if you have to eat some of this, then you ask the plant, or you ask the animal, or you ask the insect, which are animals. You ask them, you know, I'm hungry. Would one of you volunteer to be my dinner? You know, and and you ask nicely, and they'll probably say yes. You know, and you just have to have a different relationship with the life around you, and you're going to find that life is really interesting, and it's really rewarding, and it's fun. I mean, there's no way you can be healthy if you aren't happy, and you have to be happy with who you are, what you do, who you're with, and where you live. Now, there's other things you could be happy about, but if you're happy with just that, you're going to be really healthy, and you're going to be able to go out every single morning and look at the world and go, wow, isn't this just beautiful? It's amazing, you know, and you're going to have this interest in learning from it, and communicating with it and sharing it. I mean, Janet and I have taught ourselves to talk to animals. I mean, you wouldn't believe. Listen to this. Janet feeds the crows every day, and she loves crows, and she talks to them. Well, this one crow decided it really likes Janet, and if you didn't see it, you probably wouldn't believe it. But in hearing it, I think you will believe it. This one crow waits for her to go outside, and when she goes outside, he follows her around. It might be a female crow. I can't tell the difference. Yeah, follows her around, and then when she goes out on the road, he lands on the road behind her. When she puts her right leg forward and takes a step, the crow right behind her puts his leg out forward and takes a step with his right leg. Then she takes a step with her left leg, and the whole way. And I can look out the window, and Janet's walking around the yard, maybe with a cup of coffee in her hand, and this crow is following her. And that's the kind of relationship. I mean, we're organic beekeepers, and we talk to the bees, and we talk to the other animals. And you know, I had a porcupine that ate the bark off some of my peach trees, and I said, if you don't move tonight, I'm going to have to kill you tomorrow, and I don't want to, so you better move. Well, the next day my neighbor goes, do you know anything about this big porcupine that moved into my yard? But see, you know, people don't understand. They think, well, everything's there to be subdued and owned and controlled. And no, it's not. It's here to help you become a better person, if you to realize what the point is. So, you know, that's what's really going on. So when you pose that question to me about beings from another realm taking over the earth, I thought, well, we really ought to start on this topic, because I think it helps everybody understand what's going on.
right, and Gordon, I have a cat. He's my little gray. He's all gray, and really, I'm his pet, because I'm the one that I feed him. I do all these things for him. I mean, and he just sits there and looks pretty for me.
Well, I got 5 cats. I just love cats, and
I love my cat. He's awesome. His name's Kepler, and he's just he has got a personality. If I was a cat, that would be me.
yeah, I have a long-haired, pale yellow Maine Coon named Kodak. Sometimes they call him Kodachrome, but he's as pretty as the pictures. That's why I named him. And then I have a long-haired Norwegian forest cat, female, who I named Zoe, and I call her Zozo. But she's a calico, but with pumpkin color. So when she's outside, no matter where she is, she's totally camouflaged. And so I started calling her Miss Plumpkin because she was eating a lot last winter, but she's been out mousing, so she lost all the excess fat. And then I've got Henry Hudson the Explorer, and he's an orange and white cat, and he has a mustache. On his white face, he has an orange mustache. He's a Kittler, they call him.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
And, then I have Blackie, and I renamed him the Professor because I have a cat door out the kitchen, and we lock it because the northwest wind blows cold air into the kitchen. So we take a bag and we pack it full of crumpled newspapers and put it in the tunnel and then latch the door. Well, he sat in front of that. He wanted to go out, and he did not want to be kept in. So he studied that latch for about a month, and then all of a sudden one day we go in the kitchen, and he's opened the door, pulled the bag of crumpled newspapers, and he's out sitting in the wire-enclosed cat house.
You know, they're very intelligent because my cat, same thing. You close the door to keep him out. He figures out a way to shake it open.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, I love my cat. I was never a big cat person, but this cat, he's like one of my children. So
Exactly, and I think they're like crystals, and so my wife just had a biopsy to see if she has cancer today, and so I only got one cat in. After the show, I'm going to have to go find the other four. But it was such a hot day, I understand why they're outside enjoying the coolness of the night. But it's no excuse. They're supposed to be in by 5. Usually Kodak comes in at 5. It's like he's wearing a watch. He comes in just before or just after 5. And I'm like, how is it doing? How come this is the one cat? Because all the rest of them are like, oh, no, I'm going to run free. And I'm like, oh, no, you're not, because there's coyotes, fishers, foxes, bobcats, lynx, and mountain lions. And no, you're not going to run free. But, you can't always tell a cat what to do.
yeah, that's true. Become a snack. That's what my cat. He's indoors, and I hope he stays that way. I don't want him outside because I don't want nothing to happen to him.
And
So
we let him out in the morning, and then we try and get him in by 5, or at the latest by dark. We failed totally today, and but Zoe's inside upstairs sleeping with Janet. So I hope she's acting as a healing crystal to.
I hope so too. I heard that the cat's purr could be healing.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard. I don't know. So,
yeah, but Zoe's kind of funny. She doesn't mind if Janet picks her up, but if I pick her up, I've never seen a cat frown. But she frowns at me, and I'm like, oh my God. I mean, have you ever had your cat frown at you? I mean, she is really good. I should do a video because you just can't believe this facial expressions like, no, I don't want you to pick me up. No, I don't want you to hold me close. And no, I don't want you to kiss me and pet me. No, no, no. So, but she doesn't do any of that. She just looks at me and frowns. So I was like, oh, wow. I think they have their own planet.
Well, I do too. And again, I mean, they're very conscious. They're, and they're really carefree. I mean, all they care about is the basic survivals and a little loving, and they only want the loving when they want it too.
Right.
So, but,
and it's interesting that people that are interested in Eastern religion and the meaning of life, they like cats. And people that don't really care about the meaning of life but just want to do stuff, they like dogs. So if you were to go with a religion, like if you're a monk or you're into meditation or something like that, you're probably going to like a cat. And if you're like a Christian that doesn't want to understand anything but just wants to help others, you're probably going to like dogs. And that's why, like when I was dating, if a woman had a dog, I thought, but if she liked cats and had cats, I was like, this one's a potential, because it's really not really. I mean, I know people that have dogs and cats, but then that's a different story.
Yeah.
So anyway, you can see from all that I've said that if you die, would you want to have your same body again? The answer is probably not.
No, yeah, I'm hoping. This is what I'm thinking. When I die, I'm hoping that once I get to the other side, I know, all these things that I want answers to right now. I'm hoping when I get there, it's obvious now. It's like, I don't know. I go open up my locker because I'm back, and pull.
Right. That's because you're got this veil on this level here that was intentionally designed so that you couldn't know the whole story because you weren't ready for it. That's I gotta tell you this. The Council of Worlds has banned all selfish ETs from showing their ships because every time they show a saucer, they want to scare the hell out of you. So they're not allowed. So if anybody anywhere in the world now, we're under this quarantine, and it's to have a successful graduation, and that's what it is, a graduation for the people who can appreciate it, which is unfortunately only about a third of the population at best, maybe 30%, maybe even less than that.
So when will the planet graduate, and is this what Planet X is coming to do?
No, Planet X is a natural object. It's a 29,000-mile diameter planet that goes in orbit trailing twin-stranded moons, a twin-stranded stream of iron oxide dust, hydrocarbons, gravel, rocks, and moons behind it. So it goes through the solar system every 3,657 years, and I would guess it's been doing that for at least 2 billion years. So divide 2 billion by 3657, how many years it takes to come back, and that's how many times it's been coming through the solar system. But about 1 million years ago, they said, well, geez, this long orbit out into space where we go around the dark twin of the sun, which is a burned out cinder. It's off in the direction of Orion. When we go around that and we come back, it can get mighty cold. Well, they're 29,000 miles in diameter, and they're volcanic, oceanic, and atmospheric. And they have humans on it, and they're 12 feet tall. And they're very, very, very selfish. And the statues on Easter Island are actually images of them. That's what they look like. And you can see these images in the bas-relief sculpturing from the Sumerian culture, where there's the king sitting on a throne, and he's like twice as tall as the humans in front of him. And that's because they were twice as tall, but they're selfish. So they said, well, geez, we got to do something because we're out in space for 3,600 years. Our planet cools down, and then we all have to wear coats and we're freezing. Why don't we try powdering gold and putting in our upper atmosphere like a space blanket? Well, that worked really well. So they go, whoa, where can we get some gold? So they came through the solar system, and they landed on Earth and Mars, and they go, well, Earth is a jungle with dinosaurs, reptiles, it's impenetrable, there's insects, and it's just a nasty place. But look at Mars. It has oceans and a nice climate, but it doesn't have any animals or any people. So let's land there. So they landed on Mars, and being lazy, selfish jerks, they didn't bring a power plant or anything, and gold is 20 times heavier than water. So they sluiced, and some of you don't know what that means, but if you take a long channel and you put some little pieces of wood in it to interrupt the flow, and you wash dirt down the channel, the gold will get caught in front of those little pieces of wood, and then the water will wash the rocks away. And you'll end up with, that's how you get your gold. So that's called sluicing. They drained all the oceans of Mars down into the caverns below Mars. So that's very interesting because it's just like that movie Total Recall. Actually, Mars could be terraformed. All the water that was in the oceans is still there in caverns below the surface. So if that could be evaporated and melted and put back in the atmosphere, it would have a nice climate again. So they were there for a long time. They built pyramids. They did all kinds of stuff. And they built cities. They had millions of people, all Anunnaki, all 12 feet tall. And they have a monarchy. They have the king. They have a king and then princes, and it's just like the English feudal system. So, but then the last water drained down, and all of a sudden, there was no reason Mars would stay warm. It got cold, and they changed the climate. So then they're like, oh, damn, what did we do? Ooh, this isn't working. We've got to go to Earth. We don't want to go to Earth. We're going to have to kill the dinosaurs. This is not going to be fun. There's diseases and insects and a hot climate and cold climate, and what a nightmare. But they came here about 1 million years ago, and that's what's in the Sumerian tablets. So they came here to mine gold. So they mined gold for 600,000 years. So after about 600,000 years, there was a revolt, and they said, look, there's all these early people walking around on Earth and apes and all this other stuff. Why don't we use DNA to make a race to mine gold for us? And that's what the Adams and Eves were, is the gold mining slaves. And so they created us to be defective. So, and the defect is that you don't know you're an eternal soul, and you don't know that they're not God. So they created us, and they said, yeah, we're God. And this is what you got to do. You got to go mine gold every day. But if you do that, you don't need any clothing. We'll just feed you, and we'll tell you what to do. And so that's the way it was, and it went on. And that was 400,000 years ago. And that's why DNA experts have identified that every single person on Earth has come from one woman in Africa 400,000 years ago. Have you heard that before?
I have.
Yeah, well, that's what was going on. Only the laboratory was on the moon. You know, that's where they were doing the genetic stuff. So anyway, when they finally got a group that was smart enough to be good gold mining slaves, but too dumb to know that the Anunnaki weren't God, then they unleashed us. And they've discovered a city on Google Earth that's near the gold fields in Africa that is 200 miles by 150 miles, and it's 250,000 years old. So you can imagine how many people live near the gold fields in South Africa in a city that was 200 miles by 150 miles. I mean, and the ruins are there on Google Earth. Nobody ever recognized it on the ground. So this is the truth of how we came to be and what they are. Well, every time that Planet X comes through the solar system, it comes closer or further and causes more or less of a pole shift. Now, the pole shift, to explain that, because people think, oh, a magnetic pole shift, that's what it must be. They're painting runways with the North Pole mark. And no, that's not true. There must be how many million runways on Earth, and they only repainted one, and it was in Florida, because when they labeled the compass heading on the runway in white paint, they got it wrong, so they repainted it. But that has nothing to do with the magnetic North Pole. Excuse me. So imagine this. You reach up in the sky, you're bigger than the whole solar system, and you're looking down at the solar system, and you grab it, and you take the whole thing and you lay it on a table. It's like a big pancake or like a fried egg. The sun is the yolk in the center, and all the planets are going around, and from above they're going counterclockwise. Now, every single planet and the sun all have north poles, and all their north poles point upward. So that's what's going on Earth. Earth has a molten core of iron, and it has a north pole, polar axis, and a south pole, and the north pole is pointing up. Now, this is the hard part for people to realize, but when you hear it, you're going to understand. Granite weighs 200 pounds a cubic foot, so it's really heavy. The idea of granite floating doesn't seem to make sense, but what it floats on is molten iron. So of course it floats, because molten iron is so much denser than granite. Granite will not sink into the iron. So the crust of the Earth is made of granite, and there's an iron bar on the surface. It's the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. So from Iceland to Antarctica, iron upwells in the middle of the ridge. Like if you go from New York to London, it doesn't look shallow anywhere, but if you could look through the water, you would see there's a mountain range that goes from Iceland to Antarctica. And right down the center of that mountain range is a big crack. And iron is upwelling there, molten magma. And Planet X comes into the solar system from behind the sun, comes from Orion, comes around. 2003 it came around, and it was laying on its side, so its north pole was pointed at the equator of the Earth. So as the Earth turns, it tugs on this iron bar that goes from Iceland to Antarctica, but the Earth keeps turning. So every time the Atlantic Ocean comes around, it faces the sun, because that's where Planet X is. It's next to the sun, very close to the sun, but it's becoming more and more separate from the sun. And I sent you a picture, Mike, of a picture taken May 22nd, and it shows Planet X next to the sun. Did you get that?
I do have it, and I put it up on our homepage on LateNightInTheMidlands.com. People can see it on the picture slider there, and incredible picture.
Yeah, and you see, normally when you're looking towards the sun, it's so bright you can't see anything. But the tail of Planet X is 10 million miles long. Moons, rocks, iron oxide, hydrocarbons, and dust. All those gravel stones rub against each other and make a black dust. All of that is stretched out towards the Earth. Now, it's 30 million miles from Earth, but the tail is pointed at Earth, and it's rippling back and forth from static electricity. It's like, have you ever seen an aurora borealis?
I have, yes.
Yes, a lot of people haven't, but sometimes you can see them. They're different every time, but you'll see these waves of light rippling like the surface of a lake or in the ocean or something. And you're like, how can it move that fast? You know, it's almost like a laser show.
Yeah, exactly. Well, hey, Gordon, we've got to take a break here. So back and all right. So Planet X, you say it was coming around, and did it get captured by our sun?
Who are you talking?
To you, Gordon. Did
I didn't hear the first part of that question.
Oh, I say we left off with the Planet X coming around, being something like 30 million miles away, and I asked, did it get captured by our sun?
No, because gravity pushes. What's happening is it came around going clockwise, and Earth, the dark twin of Earth, and Venus were going counterclockwise. The three planets, all the same size, by the way, the dark twin, Venus, and Earth are all approximately 7,500 miles in diameter. They stopped this 29,000-mile planet from going any forward. So actually, the four planets, Planet X, Venus, the Earth, and the dark twin of Earth, which is a black cinder. It's got no oceans, no atmosphere, no people, and actually the Anunnaki are still mining gold on the dark twin of Earth by using robots, because nobody can live there. And but anyway, they stopped. And so that's illustrated in all these crop circles with a cup. There's a big circle, and then on one side of it is a cup facing outward, and in the cup are these three planets. So it's like trying to catch a dog in a corner. Dog darts to the left, you dart to the left to catch it, and then it darts to the right, then you dart to the right, and 2 hours later you still haven't caught the dog. So that's what's going on. It's sort of like a dance. But it's slightly below the ecliptic, and it's 93 million miles to the sun, and Planet X is only 30 million miles away. So it's most of the way here already. But what's happened is it got close enough that the tail got attracted to Earth from static electricity, and the sun hits the tail and lights up all that iron oxide dust. So if you go outside, which I ask everybody to do, take your digital camera, go point it at the sun and take a picture, and tell me that's normal. It's not normal. The sun looks ragged. There's so much red iron ore dust and hydrocarbons and black sand dust in the atmosphere that the sun looks ragged. And at sunset or sunrise, you can see this bright spot on the in the picture, because you can't look at it with your eyes because you'll burn your eyes out. You'll see this, there's this caterpillar on the side of the sun at the 4 o'clock position. Oh. So you'll see. Sorry about that, but
that's okay. You faded out for a moment there. You said you said sun, and then it got a little faded on us.
Oh, so the Planet X complex looks like a caterpillar on the side of the sun between the 3 o'clock and the 5 o'clock position. So that's where the extra brightness is. But if you take pictures at sunrise or sunset, you quite often get a picture of that. So this picture that I sent you, the sunlight is lighting up the tail, and the light from the tail tail is reflecting back on the dark side of Planet X and lighting it up. So that's what that is. Now, believe this or not, the moons in the tail rotate in each tail separately, like a blender, and they make this little tunnel. Have you ever been blending something in a blender and you look down and you can look all the way to the bottom where the blade is because everything's on the side of the jar?
Yeah.
Well, those are called moon swirls, and they're like little tornadoes, and they're like tubes. And sometimes one end of it points at the sun and the other end points at Earth. And then when you take a picture of the sun, you get these white circles that change. Each picture you take, the white circles are somewhere different, or maybe you might take a picture with a couple of them and the next minute you take a picture and there's no white circles. Those are called moon swirls. And there's something happened that's never happened before, not even going back all the way into ancient history about other times there's been pole shift and Planet X has come through. And that is about a month ago, I think it was. And you can look this up. It's a video on the Quad Cities. It's Quad TV 8 on the on the Mississippi River. There's a bridge between Indiana and Illinois, I guess, and that there's a place called the Quad Cities, and I think one of the cities is Terre Haute, but I'm not sure. But anyway, they have a camera, a webcam on top of the bridge showing the traffic on the bridge, and as part of their broadcast every morning, they go, well, you could see the traffic is moving just fine east, but there seems to be a slight delay moving west, and we can see a truck that's overturned, so when that's cleared up, the traffic will be fine on the bridge. You know, that kind of thing every morning, right? Yeah. So it's just after sunrise, and the sun is really low on the horizon, and all of a sudden this white circle of light moves across the Mississippi River, crosses up onto the bridge, goes down the bridge for a little ways, and then goes off the bridge across the river and disappears. And they go, whoa, what was that? You know, was that a helicopter with a spotlight? No, there's no helicopters. Was that a street light? No, all the street lights are out. What was that, a UFO? No, it's transparent because all it's doing is lighting up the river and then the bridge with a circle of brighter light. Well, guess what that was? That was for the first time ever. The tail of Planet X is so close to Earth that it channeled, like a fiber optic cable, light from the sun and illuminated the bridge and the river. Nobody's ever seen that before. It's never been reported in ancient history or anything. So we're seeing stuff that nobody has ever seen before. And if you put all these pieces together, you know, and I recommend everybody go to zetatalk.com and poleshift.ning, NING.com, and they can, that's where pictures of Planet X are being posted. They have a section where post your Planet X pictures here, and there are thousands of them from people all over the world. So it's really remarkable.
So Gordon, let me ask you this quick, because I know people would love to know. Like where I am in South Carolina, is there a way I could get a picture? And I mean, is there something special I have to do to get a picture now? Because one of my friends, he's a frequent flyer here on L&M. He sent me a real interesting picture, and I know he's a legit guy and he wouldn't make stuff up. And there was the sun, and then there was this bright object next to it, and it wasn't a lens flare. So what
I'm saying is anyone can do this now from anywhere in the world. Go take pictures of the sun, and from moment to moment, what you get will change. But I ask you this: ask yourself, is this normal? You know, for a long time since photography was invented, people would take a picture of the sun, they get this beautiful circular disc, and that's it. Now it's all raggedy because there's so much iron oxide dust and hydrocarbons in the atmosphere. And now you have this bright area from the 3 o'clock position to the 5 o'clock position on the side of the sun, and that's what it is. And you just go out and take pictures. I took pictures today. I mean, it's not normal. I mean, you can say what you want, but it's not normal. And those, you know, what I wanted to say about the Council of Worlds is not allowing selfish ETs to show their saucers. But on the other hand, there's all these skeptical people who are not ready to graduate, and they have to have an element of doubt. In other words, they would be shocked. They'd have a heart failure on the spot if they really thought there were extraterrestrials. So the Council of Worlds has required every saucer that show itself leave an element of doubt. And the element of doubt is where somebody else can say, see, those are just car headlights reflected off the clouds, or that's swamp gas, or you mixed up Jupiter and Venus, and you're an idiot, you were drinking, and that's the element of doubt. And on my show every Friday night, I've been asking the Council of Worlds, will you please eliminate the element of doubt? I mean, more than 50% of the world believes extraterrestrials are here now. So, it's like if you take a vote, that would be the result.
Absolutely. Gordon, we have a call. We've got 978 area code. You are on Late Night in the Midlands. First name, where you're calling from?
Yes, James. How you doing, Michael?
Hey, James. I'm sorry. I never remember the number. It's probably a good
I went on my home line. I didn't want to have any problems with my cell phone.
Well, thank you. Well, you're on.
Calling from New York City or something?
No, I'm actually in Lowell, Massachusetts, Gordon. How you doing, Gordon?
Good, thanks. Thanks for calling, James.
Did you see that red sun this evening? Wow. I mean, it was just gorgeous. I tried to get a picture, but I was too much in the trees. But it was just beet red. I mean, and the sky around it was also a lot of red.
In the atmosphere, it's become really dramatic, and that's when you should take a picture just after sunrise or just before sunset, because you have the additional atmospheric filtering. And some people are getting, just go to poleshift.ning.com to post your Planet X picture here and look through those pictures. If that doesn't convince you, and they're from every country in the world, all kinds of people, cell phones, professional photographers, professional videographers, webcams, the whole bunch, it's there. You can't really. So what happens is that every day the Planet X is below the ecliptic and its North Pole is pointed at the Earth. Well, when the Atlantic Ocean faces the sun, which means it's facing Planet X, the North Pole of Planet X is 23 times stronger, the magnetic field, 23 times stronger than the magnetic field of Earth. So it acts like a giant bar magnet, and it pulls down the mid-Atlantic rift. So as soon as the sun rises over the Atlantic, the sun goes north of the equator, which it shouldn't always be doing, but it's doing, and then it tries to heat the North Atlantic. So do you remember how many hurricanes we've had so far this year in the Atlantic?
0.
That's right. And you remember how many we had last year?
1.
1, that's right. And guess what? Last year in the Pacific, there were 81 hurricanes. Well, they call them typhoons and cyclones. So instead of having an equal number of hurricanes in the Atlantic and the Pacific, now we had an 81-to-1 ratio last year, and that's the Earth wobble. So every day that when the sun rises over the Atlantic, it pulls Iceland down towards the sun, which means the sun is over the North Atlantic. No matter how much the sun is over the North Atlantic, it's never going to heat the water enough to cause a hurricane. But as soon as the sun sets over the Atlantic, then the North Pole of Planet X pushes the North Pole of Earth back away. So now the sun is sitting just below the equator over the South Pacific, and guess what? It heats already hot water that makes terrible, terrible typhoons and cyclones. So that's the explanation for that. People have to start putting these pieces of the puzzle together to understand what's going, and the Earth wobble is getting worse every day. And that's why when you look at the weather thing and they go, oh, well, there's a giant loop in the jet stream. Well, guess what? The jet stream should go from west to east straight across. These giant loops are because the Earth every day is pulled down. The North Pole is pulled towards the sun, which shouldn't be happening, but it is. When the sun is over the Atlantic, and then as soon as the sun sets over the Atlantic, it's pushing the North Pole further away. And this is repeating itself every single day. And this is the weather extremes, because you have the Earth moving, but the air doesn't move as easily. So when the Earth tilts one way, like in the morning over the Atlantic, we go down into tropical air. And then as soon as the sun sets over the Atlantic, we spring back into cold northern polar vortex air. So, that's what's going on.
Have you got any idea why there's less static electricity in the air. I can explain why if you don't understand my question.
Oh, I understand it, but actually, there's more magnetism, because what's happening is the magnetic effect of Planet X pointing its north pole at the Earth is causing the core to roil, R-O-I-L, and the magma is surging and mixing in a way that it never did, and so the more heat is being transferred under the surface of the Earth. But that's causing the plates to start moving. And granite is mostly made of quartz. So when you squeeze quartz, you get the piezoelectric effect. So you get this electron flow. And then in the tail of Planet X, you have this huge magnetic field. Now, it's interesting because NASA just sent up 4 satellites, and they go, we're going to measure the magnetic reconnection flux. Well, first of all, they made that up. There is no such thing. You can look it up all you want. There's no magnetic reconnection flux in the atmosphere. They're lying. What happened is they said, "Oh, do you remember a while ago? They go, there's going to be really big aurora borealises tonight," and they said it's because of the solar flare. Well, space.com, which usually is the little minion of NASA. So whatever NASA says, they agree. It was a riot. I mean, for me, it was a riot, but most people didn't even know this went on. Space.com said, what flare? You got to be kidding. There was a small flare 4 days ago. There's no big solar flare. But sure enough, that night there was an aurora borealis. And what it was the magnetic field of Planet X interacting with the atmosphere. Well, it's interesting that magnetism controls gravity and gravity controls light. So they knew there was going to be an aurora, and so they got caught, being accused of being stupid and making stuff up. And NASA doesn't like that, so they built these 4 I love this magnetic reconnection flux satellites and sent them up. And what they're doing is they're measuring the magnetic field from the tail of Planet X because it's fluctuating so much, and that's what's bringing airplanes to crash, because these modern aircraft have motherboards and computers on board, and some of the layers in these chips are only 1 atom thick, and you get magnetic field overhead and an electron flow under shallow water, and there's an invisible lightning bolt. Like when you look at lightning, you think, wow, but you don't realize that there was an invisible bolt, like a precursor that went from the sky to the ground that you didn't see, but then the lightning follows that path. So what you get is this precursor lightning without the lightning, but that's enough to short out the chips, and that's what happened to Flight 447 that took off from South America in an Airbus and crashed in the Atlantic, and they go, oh, pilot error. Then the MH370 that took off from Indonesia, and they go, oh yeah, but the motherboards on these airplanes get fried. And not only that, but there was a ferry that caught fire in the Mediterranean, and what happened is the water was shallow there. There was one of these precursor invisible lightning strikes, and it shorted out the motherboard, and the engine started racing, and they couldn't shut it down, and it overheated, and the ferry burned, and all this kind of stuff. Like, remember when the South Korean ferry sank and all those high school kids died?
Yeah.
Well, what happened there was, as soon as the sun goes over the Pacific, it pushes the North Pole away. Well, the Earth moves, but the water takes a little while to catch up. So this ferry was going from South Korea heading southeast to the Hawaii of South Korea. It's a tropical island that people go on vacation. And all of a sudden, as the sun rose over the Pacific, it pushed the North Pole away, and the Earth moved north. And the water took a while to catch up. So the captain on the bridge said, I didn't touch anything. We were headed southeast, and all of a sudden we're going north 20 miles. And then we capsized. Well, the reason why they capsized is because the owner had added 100 cabins on top of the boat and made it top-heavy, which had nothing to do with Planet X. But the fact was, the reason why it stopped going southeast and went north 20 miles was because the water was trying to catch up with the land. So there have been all kinds of strange tidal waves, not really noticeable or newsworthy, coming in all over the planet, because the Earth is moving fast during the day to come south over the Atlantic, and then it's moving north when the sun goes over the Pacific. So there's all these little odd things that have been going on for the last 2 years, which are all connected, and that's because of the proximity of Planet X.
I see.
Yeah, well, I was actually throwing out 1-inch sparks during the equinoxes for the years leading up to 2012. They were progressively getting bigger and bigger, and then in 2012, I was actually throwing almost like 1-inch sparks for that summer. And since then, it's been like nothing, no static electricity at all. And I'm wondering if it's like the chemtrails, so many chemtrails in the air, and it's just had the effect, or possibly in my body has dulled the effects, because it's always affecting me, the static electricity. And I
don't know what to tell you, because I live in Maine, and when it gets 45 below and there's no moisture left in the air, we get static electricity.
Right. Well, I'm not getting any that I usually get, and I was just wondering. All right, thank you, Gordon. Thank you, Michael.
All right, thank you for the call, James. I appreciate it. And again, if you are not already a late nighter and you want to call in, guess the number between 1 and 10, give us a question or comment, and you could win a 3-month subscription. So we're feeling like giving today or tonight. So feel free to call in. You can also do it by chat, but if you're already a late nighter, we are getting questions nevertheless from some of our late nighters. And let's see, do we get to choose the planet we go to after death is one of the questions. But I want
yes, if you're an advanced soul and you have no negative karma and your next step would be better taken somewhere else, yes, you will. But if you have accumulated all kinds of negative karma, created distortions, you're going to have to stay with that same group. And if you're selfish, you're all going to go to a selfish planet. And if you're mostly selfish but not completely selfish, you're all going to go as sea creatures to relive your karmic experiences and try and resolve them.
Nice.
So you don't really have the freedom, and that's something that you and your spirit guides decide after you die. And it's not entirely up to you, because it depends on whether you have good karma or not. I mean, if you don't, that gives you the freedom. So by following the golden rule and being empathetic and caring about other people, you're going to find that you have freedom that you don't have otherwise.
Okay.
So,
and Adonna, no, that was the wrong number, but you're already a late nighter from what I understand. And here's another question. JH asks, how long does Planet X stay around each time it visits?
Well, it's different every time, you see. So it came around in 2003, and people asked the Zetas, when is pole shift? And they said any time, because it's like trying to catch the dog that's in the corner. You know, you dart to the left, you dart to the right, and 2 hours later you're still trying to catch the dog, and you haven't, and the dog hasn't escaped either. So that's the situation. And we don't really know, but I'll tell you this. Do you remember there was a time when, I think it was around 2011, all of a sudden these boxes were found on the beach in Oregon, and they were humming, and the people said, oh, that's a hoax, and what is it? But the ETs said that they put over 10,000 of these boxes on all the fault lines of Earth to stop the Earth changes, to give mankind a chance to have massive social change. Well, guess what happened? They put on the brakes in 2010 of the Earth changes, and guess how much positive social change there's been on the Earth since then? Almost none.
Yeah.
So now they just announced the other day that the Council of Worlds has taken their foot off the brakes. Now that's what the Operation Jade Helm is. The New Madrid fault is probably going to go off in September, followed by the San Andreas fault. So I can promise you this, the world that we live in now is not going to be the world we're living in at Christmas time. There are going to be so many changes. It's possible the economy would collapse. The country would be in chaos. We could have 30 to 50 million people homeless. And the special forces deployed across 11 western states has nothing to do with martial law or taking over. It's what's happening is the northern tip of South America is trying to move west, and it is going to move west 400 miles. And in order to do that, because the southern tip of South America is attached to Antarctica, in order to do that, there's going to have to be a crack developing in the southern part of South America on the Atlantic side. When that crack develops, then the northern tip of South America is going to move to the west. It's going to crush Central America. But guess what keeps it from moving? The southern edge of the Caribbean plate. Well, that's having volcanoes and earthquakes, incredible, and it's breaking off right now. So even the southern shore of the island of Jamaica is having tidal waves come in that they can't explain. But it's the southern side of the Caribbean plate is going to be detached and then sink. That's going to pull down Florida, Alabama, Mississippi, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, and this could all start happening this year. So if you have 30 million homeless people, you can see that the grid might go down, the economy would completely disappear.
Might this be why some of these states are making it be homeless is illegal?
Well, everybody, let me put it this way. No country in the world has offered to take the immigrants from any other country. All the leaders know what's going on. And not only that, but in the United States, no state has volunteered. Did you hear South Carolina volunteer to take all the people from Florida?
No, not at all. As a matter of fact, I have no confidence whatsoever in my state government anymore.
Well, the thing is that South Carolina is going to sink too. So do you think North Carolina is going to take everybody from South Carolina and Florida and Georgia?
I doubt that, and I think a lot of people will go down with the ship because they just won't believe any of this.
So the president is going to announce this, and at best, if he said, "My dear fellow Americans, NASA and JPL found Planet X in 1983, and that night President Reagan declared it to be a top secret by executive order, and I, Obama, have just overturned the executive order, and now I'm telling you there is a rogue planet in the solar system, and it's going to cause pole shift, and you can read Zeta talk about it." And that's what I expect to happen in September, because he has to do this before the first, because if people can look up in the sky and plainly see Planet X separated from the sun, then that means you're 49 days until pole shift. So, you know, right now you can't do that without using a welding filter or something to see that it's there, or a camera with a red filter on it. Otherwise, you can't see that it's there. But when that day comes, then mark your calendars, because you've got exactly 7 weeks until pole shift. So as Planet X comes closer, when it reaches, when it causes pole shift, is going to be when it's 15 million miles away. And the way it's going to do that is the North Pole of Planet X is going to grab the mid-Atlantic ridge, and the crust is going to stop turning. Nothing will change the core. The core will still be turning. The North Pole of the core will still be pointed up. But then, once it does that and it grabs the crust of the Earth, it's going to zoom by and slide. As it zooms by, it's going to slide the crust up over the North Pole and then release it and continue. And that is going to make the eastern tip of Brazil the new North Pole.
Wow. Wow, that's some serious stuff here, Gordon.
Right. And then, but when it gets to 20 million miles away, it's going to actually pull the Earth 5 million miles closer to the sun. So we're going to have 6 days of the rotation of the Earth. Now, like I said, nothing changes the core. The core is still going to be rotating. The North Pole will still be pointed up, but the crust will not be turning. So those are what's called the 3 days of darkness. Well, of course, if you're in the Atlantic area, you're going to have the sun over the Atlantic Ocean, because Planet X is next to the sun. So you're going to have 3 days of light. But in the Pacific, they're going to have 3 days of darkness.
Well, if we get pulled 5 million or 500 million miles?
No, I said we'll be pulled 5 million miles closer to the sun. So instead of 93 million miles, we will be 88 million. And guess what? The daily temperature for those 6 days in Chicago is going to be over 150 degrees. And all the forests of the earth are going to dry out, and people are going to be dying of heat exhaustion, and water will be evaporating. And then as Planet X goes by, its tail, 10 million miles of rocks and dust, is going to hit the earth for 3 days, a shower of rocks. So for the pole shift itself, you don't want to be near the coast, because there'll be a sloshing of the oceans about 600 feet high. Then but you don't want to be underground, because there'll be 9 and 10 earthquakes, magnitude earthquakes. And all the volcanoes will go off, so you won't even have a real clear view of the sky, because all the volcanoes will be erupting. And lava will be flowing, and there'll be huge quakes everywhere. And the whole southern United States will sink, and the salt water will go up the St. Lawrence Seaway to the Great Lakes and down the Mississippi.
Well,
and the eastern part of the country will be a continental island.
If we get that much closer to the sun, wouldn't that be enough to change things dramatically here?
No, it's going to go back. After Planet X leaves, it's going to go back, because there's a natural orbit for Earth considering its size, and it will go back to that. So it's not a permanent change. But what I'm saying is that these last days, the last week, is just going to blow people's minds. And there will be people who will just die of shock. And if you want to be a survivor, and listen, it's your right to say, I don't believe any of this, and if a tidal wave comes in, I'm just going to let it take me. That's fine. Do that. But if you want to be a survivor, go to Zeta Talk, and right at the top there's a heading called Safe Areas, and it lists every area in the world, and you can find out what's going to happen there. And like all of India is going to slide under the Himalayas like a dresser drawer slamming shut, and 1.25 billion people are going to die just like that.
And for those of you who will be listening to this on the Dark Matter Radio Network, I should tell you that link for Zeta Talk we'll have up on the website for you as well. Because I know a lot of people are going to want to get over there and check this out. And, Gordon, there's a lot of people also who don't take this serious at all. They say, oh, here we go again. But, when you have this way of, when you're telling me this information, you sound very, very, very sincere, and I tend to believe you. And so you're thinking by December we could really start seeing some major, major changes, if not the change.
Well, there won't be pole shift by December, but the thing is the earliest it could happen would be next April. Now, my wife had a dream that the first tidal waves coming in were pushing ice. Well, there's no ice in August. The ice is just beginning to form in December, and it's already formed and breaking up in April. So I think pole shift itself will occur in April, either next April or the April after. But now that the Council of Worlds has taken their foot off the brake, and they were holding up, see, I think that in 2010, when they put their foot on the brake, if they hadn't put their foot on the brake, I think pole shift would have occurred in December of 2012. I really do. But they put their foot on the brake, and they put it on the brake for like 2 years now. And now when they release it, it could be up to 2 years before pole shift comes, or we could be further. That's the point, is nobody knows exactly. And the reason why nobody wants, the ETs know exactly. Zeta Talk, you can look at it, these predictions as a probable reality. And by that, I mean present events create a certain outcome, and that's the outcome they're looking at, and that's how they're able to say what's going to happen, because it's been happening for 2 billion years, and they can see what's happening with the Earth itself, and they can see that there's no social change. People are not waking up. I talk to people and they go, yeah, pole shift comes, I'm going to die. I know it.
Yeah.
It's just like, okay, fine, or I'm going to pull up a chair and we'll let the first wave coming in. But the Zetas have said that pole shift will either occur because of magnetic trimesters, a concept I don't really understand myself, so I can't explain to you. I'd love to understand it, but I don't. But they said pole shift will either happen in August, December, or April. So I don't believe it's going to happen this August, because that's too soon. If it was going to happen in August, then in July we should have seen Planet X separate from the sun. And by separate, I mean that everyone in the world can look up and go, "Oh my God, what's that?"
Now,
who put the brakes? If the president didn't announce it beforehand, then nobody's going to believe him. It doesn't matter what he says. But the likelihood is that it'll probably be in April of 2017, although I don't know that. It could be April of 2016. but I believe, based on subliminal body language and words that the president spoke this week, that he is planning to suspend the election and remain in office for a third term to see the United States through pole shift.
Yeah, and he did say that he believes he could win a third term. That's kind of...
He won't win it. He'll just order it by executive action. Because once people see what's happening, I mean, who's going to want an election? But if he waits until all the disasters start happening to announce it, then people are going to go, the hell with you. You couldn't even tell about this. A planet comes into the solar system, and maybe a third to two-thirds of the United States population is going to die, and you couldn't tell us before this? They're going to say, whoever's ahead in the polls, they're the new president. So don't have an election. Donald Trump will be the new president.
Hey, I don't mind that at all.
No.
I kind of like where he's been going, but now
you don't really want the wildebeest to take over, do you?
No, God, no more Clintons, no more Bushes. I mean, that nightmare's got to end.
Right.
Somebody,
the thing about Trump is, whether he would make a good president or not, I think he probably would. But you know what? He makes the other 15 Republican candidates look like dog poop just baking in the sun. I mean,
yeah, he sure does. He sure does. Hey, somebody asked who put on the brakes for
Council of Worlds. That's 1,000 benevolent extraterrestrial species working together. They've formed 40 working groups so they don't duplicate their efforts, and they're contacting every single person on Earth to tell them of what's coming and what's important. What's important, I hope you gathered by the trend of my conversation, is this is a school. And this is a school that hopes to graduate as many people as possible. And that's what's really important. It doesn't matter whether there's an apocalypse or anything. Are you trying to become a better person each day? That's the only thing that gives you a choice. If you want to remain with your eyes shut, your ears shut, and not listen to anybody and not pick up on any of this stuff and just continue what you're doing and then die, I guarantee you're going to be reliving this soap opera for a long time. But the rest of us, we're like, hey, there is something better and I want to go towards it.
Yeah, well, and that's what I've been trying to do with this half of my life, I think, is just try to be the best person I could be. And I'll tell you, in today's society, they don't make it easy for you. I have another question here.
Sure.
The fiery dragon, tail snaps. How bad will that be on the Earth?
It could put a hole there. See, it's going to be showers of rocks. So there'll be some places that don't have rocks at all. But that's why when you go to Mesa Verde, you see that the Indians say the ant people told us to build under this overhang so that when Planet X comes through and has the shower of rocks, we'll survive.
Okay. All right. Well, Gordon, we're gonna take one more break here. I'm gonna put you on hold again, and then we're gonna come back, finish up. And lines are open. If anybody wants to call in, you may do so. So, Gordon, hang on with us for a moment.
Trying to answer all questions if I can,
Absolutely, and I appreciate it, and I appreciate you taking time out with us. It's been a great show. So,
well, you can have me back anytime. I love you, and I love this show, and I want your listeners to be the best informed anywhere.
Well, I appreciate that, and I'd like to actually get you back in August, you and your wife, as a matter of fact.
Oh, yeah, she would love to be on.
All right, great. So hold on with us for a moment. I'll put you on hold, going to get quiet, and then we'll...
Port in North America after pole shift will be Omaha, Nebraska. Think about that.
Wow. That's good. Now, that's quite a thought. Now, I have another question here. Someone asks, what's your opinion on Marshall Masters' information on Planet X? And I'm glad they're not asking me that.
Well, I'm gonna say that he is an idiot, and he thinks that there's a constellation coming through, and Planet X is the constellation, and then there's a planet, and he thinks it's still 18 times the size of Jupiter, and it's outside the solar system. But I'll tell you, he had a webcam from Costa Rica, and he said, there there's Planet X next to the volcano, and you could look on the webcam, and there was a blue thumbprint on the lens, and he goes, I'm calling Planet X Blue Bonnet. And then clouds came over the volcano, and of course the thumbprint was still there, and I was like, geez. And you can go to his site, Yowza, which is it's a joke, really. So,
yeah.
And there's other people like that. Gil Broussard thinks Planet X comes through every couple of years. You've got James McCanney, who's hoping that the CIA will promote him as the expert on everything, which is never going to happen. So there's a lot of people. They're really muddying the waters and mixing things up to create disinformation so that you won't believe it. But I think when you hear me speak, you know that it's true. I know I have an element of truth in my voice because I believe that what I'm saying, you know, and it isn't just that all the pieces fit into the puzzle. You know, I was talking about this before I started reading Zeta Talk, and I started reading Zeta Talk in 2006 because Janet and I said, well, I wonder if anybody else is saying what we're saying, that you've got to make a conscious choice to be unselfish. And then I go, holy mackerel, they're saying everything I'm saying, but in even more detail. And since then, I've become friends with Nancy Lieder. She's a wonderful person. If you looked her up on Wikipedia 6 months ago, it would say she was a horrible person. She's a cult leader. The Planet X is going to collide with the Earth, and she's an idiot. And then, mysteriously, 3 months ago, they rewrote it to compliment her and build her up, and nothing about this cult and a hoax and all this stuff. So there's obviously some government influence that on a really slow level, because as soon as they mention Planet X and you do a search for that, or Nibiru, you're going to come up with Zeta Talk. And when you do, you're going to realize, well, unselfish ETs have been telling us what's going to happen since 1995. And, you know, it's going to be like, not only is there disclosure of Planet X, but there's disclosure of extraterrestrials. So I'm just trying to speed it up. And I've been doing this on my show for the last month, but I'm going to do it right now on your show. Repeat after me. We're going to call upon the Council of Worlds to eliminate the element of doubt. Now, the element of doubt is where when you see a saucer, somebody else can say, oh, yeah, that was swamp gas and you were drunk. So we're going to eliminate that because more than 50%. So the Council of Worlds, they can't just mess with things on Earth because that would involve them karmically. But when the majority of a planet vote for something and ask for it, they can grant it, and it's no skin off their back. So this is what I want you to say. Repeat after me. I call upon the Council of Worlds to eliminate the element of doubt. And I ask that in all light and love. And it's time that everyone knows there are extraterrestrials and that most of them are very nice people who we'd like to be friends with. So I call upon the Council of Worlds to eliminate the element of doubt. And if you can say that out loud as often or with other people as you can, then this is going to speed this up. Because if you're waiting for Stephen Greer and Stephen Hawking and Seth Shostak to discover radio signals to tell you, you know, and that whole thing, the $100 billion award for finding ETs, that is just to confuse the issue, because they're going to say, well, how can Gordon talk about contacting extraterrestrials if we're still looking for them? You see? And that's a CIA plot. It's a misinformation. It's like to dumb you down. And we've already been dumbed down so far that most of us aren't going to make it back, you know? So, you know, this is the time to say that's ridiculous. Why search the universe for radio signals when I have saucers landing in my yard, I have ETs in my yard, I have ETs in my house? I mean, you want to go to that Josh Tolley interview and listen to Janet talk about being the mother of hybrid children. I mean, Janet is really intelligent. She's a beautiful soul. She's very warm and emotional and kind. And, of course, they wanted to have her as one of the mothers of the hybrid race. So we've had a very interesting life, and if you want to know more about that, listen to that interview, because Janet doesn't do very many interviews, but if you ask Michael, we will do one with you.
Well, I appreciate that. Yeah, I'd love to hear all about it. And so I know people are pretty curious as to what areas might be safe places. Any at the top of your head that come to mind where people...
Oh, yeah, the whole Appalachian Mountains from Maine to Stone Mountain, Georgia are all going to be above water. If you like being on a continental island, sort of like New Zealand, that'll be ideal. The whole center of the country, from Lake Michigan all the way down to the Mississippi, will be a 200-mile wide gulf of salt water, and the St. Lawrence Seaway will rip open wide, and there's going to be salt water all the way up over Kansas into eastern Colorado. And you don't really want to move to Colorado because that's where they're going to have the carry-on government. So that's where the after-time president and the military are going to be in charge. So I think most of you would agree you don't want to be there.
No wonder they legalized the pot there first, right?
And Alaska is going to be is going to melt. The new equator is going to go through Alaska to Hawaii, and Hawaii is going to survive. But remember, the oceans are going to come up 700 feet.
Wow.
Now, the reason why I'm in Maine is because there's only 2 places in the world that are going to come up, and they're both going to come up about 500 feet. And even so, there's 3,000 islands on the coast of Maine. All but one of them will be underwater. But there'll be a whole new bunch of 3,000 islands a little bit further inland. And this mountain that I'm on is going to be an island. And I'm used to the ocean, and I'm looking forward to that. And so is my wife. Because, we've worked on commercial fishing boats. We love the ocean. And we'll have animals to hunt on land, and we'll go down to the shore and catch crabs and lobsters. I mean, what's wrong with that?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, do what you got to do to survive. And we do have a call. We've got 585, that's Rochester, and this must be Bruce.
Yes, it is, Mike. I do have a question that Adana wanted answered.
Okay.
And her question revolved around safety for the Rochester, New York area, which is, we're 1,000 feet from Lake Ontario, but we're almost 400 miles from the Atlantic coast.
Right, but listen to this. The St. Lawrence Seaway is going to rip open, and the Great Lakes and the St. Lawrence are all going to be at the same height of the world's oceans, which are going to be 700 feet higher than they are today.
Well, then I think we are toast.
That's what I'm trying to say to you indirectly. Now, one reason why, because if you ask scientists, they say, if all the ice in the world melted, how high would the oceans go? And they'll go, oh, yes, we've already figured that out. It'll be 200 feet. But they don't realize that there's going to be a huge brand new continent coming up between South America and Africa. So Africa is going to move to the east, South America is going to move to the west, and right in the middle is a brand new continent. And the English government is rebuilding all of its bases in the Falkland Islands because England and the UK are going to be completely underwater. The Queen has been planning to abandon her subjects. The most poorly informed people on earth are people who live in the United Kingdom. But the government is planning to go from the Falkland Islands. The minute that continent breaks the surface, they're going to go plant the British flag on it. Oh, it's sad. And we just signed a contract in Australia on the southeastern coast for the largest military base outside the United States. And what do you think that's for? That's because when all the ice melts in Antarctica, guess who plans to go and plant their flag on it and take it for ourselves is the United States.
Mm-hmm.
The thing
down in Antarctica.
The thing they haven't figured is that, and Russia's going, okay, you're going to take Antarctica, we're going to take the Arctic. So, but the thing they haven't figured is that all the governments will collapse. Because who needs government? If you have all unselfish people, then you don't need a government. The only reason you have a government is 2 reasons. Is other governments want to make war on you and you've got to defend yourself. But if they're gone and they're not doing that and there's only unselfish people, there's not going to be any governments trying to invade you. Then you've got selfish people. And God knows you need rules to protect yourself from them. But if everyone's unselfish, guess what? You don't need that either. So it's going to be a whole new world. It's not like they're going to rebuild the electrical grid and they're going to put in new roads and give you new cars. No, they're going to
it would be totally, totally different.
Right. It's going to be a new world. This is the beginning of the new age. You could cry and say, if I don't have my job where I earn $900,000 a year and I don't have my Mercedes, it's going to be awful. But those of us like me, I'm living month to month on Social Security, and I'm
Same
thinking,
here.
This is going to be the beginning of a new age, and I'm looking forward to it. It's going to take a big broom to sweep the world clean of what's wrong, but that's what's coming, a really big broom, a broom the likes of which, see, the last pole shift 3,600 years ago when the Jews left Egypt, that only moved the North Pole from Greenland to the Arctic, which was a 12-degree shift. This one's going to be 92 degrees.
Oh, so man.
This is big, and it's only going to take an hour. So you can imagine the crust.
An hour?
Yeah,
Holy.
That's how long it's going to take. And so as the rotation of the crust slows down and then stops, the noises of those are the trumpets that are described in the Book of Revelation, and it's going to be the scariest sounds you've ever heard. And that's going to be the fingers that attach the crust to the core are going to be breaking off. And the noise is going to be something else. So people are going to hear that and die. So, you might have 60% of the world died in the tidal wave at pole shift because you don't realize that the water collects at the equator. Well, if you stop spinning, the water is going to move back towards the poles. Then when it shifts and you get a new equator, it's going to move back to the new equator, and all of that's going to cause worldwide 675-foot tidal surges. They won't be waves, but the water will come in and it'll just keep coming in. And,
wow.
And then
that's the thing when you said about the water going back to the poles, because you lose the centrifugal force around the equator area.
Exactly.
Wow, that's the information that you're putting out right now is just ginormous.
Well, see, I was picked as a future astronaut, so I have a real scientific background. I was like one of the brightest science and math students in the New York area. Then I started seeing flying saucers, and I go, if I get good at this, they're going to have me building missiles to kill people, and I don't want to do that because I've already seen flying saucers. So I go, well, they're covering up something here. And
right.
then I got a degree in psychology, and then I was a trial lawyer. Then I worked for the UN on a code of moral conduct for international corporations. Then I worked for the State of Vermont Environmental Board. Then I had a trial practice in Connecticut. And one day I said, excuse me, I paid my way through school by doing contracting work. So I never had a school loan. And the day I graduated from law school, I was completely paid up. And I graduated at the top of my class. So
that's fabulous.
So I'm not stupid, and I'm not somebody that's sitting around, oh, who's going to take care of me next? Or I'm not like calling you up and saying, what have you done for me lately? I'm like a self-starter. When I want to go do something, I do it, and I just make it happen. And I'm not going to wait around to be serviced. I mean, come on.
Right.
I've never been that way. So when I talk about stuff, I do have a great science background. And when I listen to these other so-called experts, I'm like, oh, God, bad science, more bad science, disinformation, muddying the waters, confuse people, So people, do you know what they discussed at the Bilderberg meeting this year? I
have no idea.
Well, of course, because it's top secret. But my wife they had an agenda in the newspaper. My wife was reading it to me. She goes, global warming, global warming, global warming. Yeah. I said, stop that. I said, listen, I know what they're discussing behind the scenes. Planet X, Planet X, Planet X. Well, Nancy Leader took that as a question from the public, and the Zetas answered it and said, and this is what I love. You got to love the rich people, the elite and the powerful, the billionaires that all met at Bilderberg. They were discussing, after the economy collapses, how can we still get people to keep their noses to the grindstone? How are we going to get them to come and work in the factories? Oh, we could pay them with baskets of food every Friday.
Well, look, the information you just parlayed to me is beneficial to us all. Michael, I wanted to let him get back on in case anyone else has a call to come in.
All right, Bruce, did Adana have a number?
God bless you.
Yeah, and Adana says use the number 6.
All right, well, tell Adana she's 1.
Oh.
I like your method, Michael. I like it.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. Well, tell her it's all hers. She just got to email Ira, or he's in the chat, and let him know, and he'll hook her up.
Yeah, well, she can't talk right now because of the tongue surgery that she had yesterday, so she is hurting.
Yeah, and I wish her the best. Donna, get well quick. Put a lot of cold yogurt or ice cream or whatever it is you're eating on it, and it'll heal quickly, hopefully.
Right. And tell the guests that it was a pleasure talking to them, and I'm sure there might be other people that want to make a quick call.
All right, you just did.
Have you ask questions, I'll tell you.
All right.
Okay. Thank you so much, sir.
I want to tell you that I opened up a mailbox so that people could send me postcards from where they are and where they're listening. So if you feel like doing that, you go get a nice postcard of your area, a nice scenic, And I'm going to put a big board up on the wall, and I'm going to put all the postcards I get. So far I've gotten 3, and they're all joke postcards, but I'm looking for scenic postcards. But anyway.
Hey, that's a good idea. I like that.
But anyway, the address to write to me is P.O. Box 51. Well, they had like 400 post office boxes, and I selected 51 without realizing that's like Area 51,
Yeah.
But anyway, it's P.O. Box 51, Ellsworth, 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 Maine, and the abbreviation for Maine is ME, and the zip code is 04605. And you're going to post this on YouTube, on your YouTube channel, right?
I am, and I'm going to do something else for everybody tonight too. It's the gift that keeps on giving here at L&M. I'm going to post tonight's show. Ira's going to post it on YouTube, the whole show, so everybody will get the entire show. You won't have to subscribe to listen to the second half. It'll be there for you because it's that good. It's that important. I'm not going to lock it up. And we do have Ira on the line, as a matter of fact, right now. Ira, welcome.
Hello. Thank you for taking my call tonight. I'll be really quick. I know we're starting to run short on time. So this has been a fabulous show so far. I've loved it. I kind of wanted not really to ask a question, but to give a little bit of input, like to verify some of the things that you were talking about here. I don't know if you've heard about this or not. I'm sure that you have, but they discovered and announced a few months ago that they have found that there are vast oceans underneath the ground near the Earth's core. And in fact, they estimate that it could be up to 3 times the amount of water under the Earth as opposed to what's on the surface. So if something were to occur, that a shift occurred or cracks appeared and all this kind of stuff, that water could actually come up from the underworld, basically, up to the surface, and that would add a vast amount of water into the whole equation. Okay,
well, there is some water under the crust. The crust is a lot deeper than people think it is.
Yeah.
They studied the volcano in Hawaii, and how deep it was. And it was 125 miles deep, but below that, the ground started getting cooler. So the lava uplift of the molten magma stopped at 125 miles. And people, there's always been a debate on how thick the crust is, but I guarantee you there's no water in that molten iron ball at the beginning. But imagine how big the molten iron ball is on planet X. If it's 29,000 miles wide, its magnetic field is 23 times stronger than Earth's. So there's a huge difference between planets. But as to whether there's water all the way in the center, no. But as to whether there's a lot of water under the crust, well, I'm friends with this Colonel Donald Ware, and I know he's well-intentioned, and I like him a lot, and he comes to basically the same ultimate conclusions I do, but he's really big on this inner Earth, that there's all these cities there. I don't really know what to think of it, but I don't really subscribe to it. But, the Zetas are interested in people surviving, but they're more interested in your spiritual growth, because if you just die and go and redo the whole thing all over again, would you like to redo your life over again? No, I bet you wouldn't.
If I can have the knowledge I have now, it might be fun. I don't know.
Right. Yeah.
See, you're awake, and you realize that there's a road that you could take, and you're thinking, why don't I take it? Whereas other people who are asleep, they don't even know there's a choice about anything. If things keep happening to them, and you can tell who the young souls are, because they're not interested in anything. You tell them something, and it's like, whoa. But when you have an old soul, they gain mastery in one area, and the funny thing about that is once they become a master in one area, it's easier to become a master in another area, then another, and another. And that's how you grow to a new level of consciousness. And so that's, if you're really awake, that's what you want to do, is become a better person, become telepathic, live longer, travel the universe, see all the sights, help make everybody heal and be healthy and happy. And that's why we're going to be known as the Explorer Race. We're going to build this fleet of spaceships. We're going to go out to every part of the universe, and we're going to land and see what the problem is and say, oh, man, we fixed that such a long time ago on Earth, and this is what you do about that. That's how you handle it. So it doesn't seem, as you look around, that all the biggest problems have been solved. But somewhere on Earth there are people who solved every problem. And when we all become telepathic, all that will be accessible to each of us. So it's going to be a really exciting time, and I'm looking forward to it.
Sounds great. I definitely appreciate it, and I love your idea of the differences between people and being the dog and the cat people. I liked that quite a bit. Anyways, thanks, guys, for having a great show. It's been wonderful.
Well, thank you for the call, Ira, and everything else that you do, of course, and thank you again. Now, I do have a couple more questions here in our chat room.
Listen, for you, Michael, I would stay on for another 2 hours.
Well, I appreciate it. And with you, I could do another 2 hours. It's that interesting. Crystal asks, she says, would anything happen to the radiation and all the other junk that is put on the Earth, like pollutions, like radiation? Would it go away? What would happen to all that?
That's a really good question, because let me tell you, every single nuclear reactor on Earth is located on a fault line, because where the land meets the water, guess what's right there? A fault line. That's why the water's right there. So that's the best question of all, because without the Council of Worlds transmuting the radiation to being harmless, we would all die. There's no question. And if you think about them spending all this time and energy slanting this towards success, working on this for at least 200 years to have this be a successful graduation, then why would they let it all get thrown away because of the selfish people who wanted nuclear plants? So only Canada and Germany have decided to close all their nuclear plants. You think the United States is going to? No. Obama wants to build more of them. So the thing is the aliens are capable of taking something like plutonium. Now, let's say that plutonium has a half-life of 125,000 years. So that means in 125,000 years, it's half as radioactive as it was. Then in another 125,000 years, it's half as radioactive as it was. Then it seems like it goes on forever. You'd never escape it. But the ETs have already demonstrated to the world, and I mean the military of Russia and the United States and England and all the developed countries, that they have taken a radioactive warhead and in front of the military made it harmless within like seconds. And they transmute the half-life of radiation from 125,000 years to 125th of a second. So they can do it. And if they don't do it, we're all doomed, and I have every faith that they will do it. But if you'd like to ask, I call upon the Council of Worlds to eliminate all radiation from Earth at the time of pole shift, to save us all and give us a chance to be in contact with positive extraterrestrials and rebuild a new Earth. So you can walk around saying that kind of stuff, and you should. Because, if you don't put it in words, it's like you think, oh, I'm a good person, but then the next day somebody cuts you off and you start yelling at them, then you get out of your car and you beat the crap out of them. Have you proven that you're a good person? No, you failed the exam. So that's what this apocalypse is. It's really like a final exam. You can sit there thinking you're the most wonderful person in the world, but in a real situation, can you demonstrate it? I mean, I say, if you want to really prove that you've learned something, even if you have only 5 minutes to live, make sure that you spend that time trying to help somebody else. Don't be afraid of your own death. You're an eternal soul. You have a unique contribution to make to the whole universe that nobody else can make. Nobody has your sense of design, your sense of humor, your artistic talent, your interest in history, your ability to whatever it is. You are actually unique. So each person needs to find out, like, what can I do really well that nobody else seems to do as well as I can, and do that. Make a contribution to life, and you're on the way to being somebody that will survive. When your body dies, your soul is gonna survive, and you're gonna look back on your life and go, oh boy, didn't I make some mistakes? But at least I tried to be a better person every day, and that's what's important. So you have the apocalypse, you have the changeover to the fourth dimension, you have contact with ETs, you have the new race. All of this stuff is coming together right now.
It is. It absolutely is. And I have one more question for you, and you can give the quick answer to this if you like.
Okay.
But one of the listeners says, what ETs was it that you've made contact with? And I think you covered that. But they also asked, is it possible that they could be wrong or guiding you in the wrong direction?
No. Do I sound stupid? I mean, really, do I?
No.
Listen, have you ever heard anybody explain it this well? And I'm not trying to blow my own horn, but I'm just trying to tell you, this is because I've spent most of my life, I'm 66, I'm going to be 67 in October, and this has been my major interest. And I get so excited, I want to tell other people. There's nothing I'd rather be doing than learning stuff and sharing it with people. And gradually, as I learned more and more and more and began to understand what the meaning of the universe is, to learn and then teach, I got so excited that I had to start sharing it. So, no, I have not been misled, and I have lived many lifetimes as a Pleiadian. I've gone on saucers to other planets. I've spent time in other civilizations like Andromeda and Arcturus and all kinds of places. My wife, the same for her, but she is in contact with the Zetas. Since before birth, she agreed that she would come and be part of the Zeta program for the new race. So it's been a really exciting time. And since we've been together, which is 25 and a half years, we have had somewhere between 3 dozen and 4 dozen times we have had ships close to us or in our yard or in the air above the yard, and we've had ETs in the house, and I taught myself telepathy, and I can ask the ETs things, and they will answer it for me. I don't ask them to do things for me, but I do ask them to do things for other people. But you can do that too. You can make a call. They can't respond to you consciously unless you ask them to. That's one of the rules of this veil that surrounds Earth. So if you're an unselfish person and you make a call to be contacted by unselfish ETs, that gives them permission to do that. Now, they are aware of where you're at in your life. So they may not land a saucer in your yard because what are you going to tell your spouse? And she's going to go, oh boy, I'm taking you to the mental hospital. You need some pills. So, maybe you would go and tell your boss and get fired or, disrupt your life totally. But Janet and I have arranged our life so that can't disrupt anything. And we've always been open to this, and now we've been together for 25 and a half years, and it's just grown stronger. So no, I'm not misdirected. We have things happening all the time, and because of the internet, I mean, listen, we don't have it easy. You think anybody in my town wants to hear me talk about this? They go, well, he plows snow. What the hell could he know about,
Yeah, exactly. Well, Gordon, we are out of time. What I want to do is give you the floor real quick. Anything you want to get out there and plug, and I promise next month I want to have you and your wife back and do a full show with you, and wow, we cannot let it go that long. I had no idea it was that long. The time has just flown.
Well, it's been really good, and I've had a lot of fun, and it's a pleasure to be talking to you, and thank you very much. I really do appreciate it. Tomorrow, I'm going to be on freedomslips.com taking over the Royce Holloman show, which I've been on his show before, but he just had to go to the hospital. He's not in great shape. So I'm going to take over his show at 3 o'clock Eastern tomorrow, and then my show is on freedomslips.com at midnight Eastern on Friday nights.
Royce is a friend of mine on Facebook, and he's in one of our groups, and I've been following what he does, and and the illness that he's been fighting. And you know, I pray for him all the time. I hope.
We can say where two or more are gathered together in my name, there I will be, said Jesus. So we ask you, Jesus, please help Roy Solomon and give him health and hope and happiness. Amen.
All right, amen. Well,
I believe in prayers. You know, these Bible thumpers go, oh, he's dealing with demons, and oh, he's giving birth to babies without souls. And I guarantee you it's not like that at all. I mean, it's so far from that. I mean, just think of the most advanced, happiest people you've ever met, and that's what these unselfish ETs, they just radiate, unconditional love. And it's just an awesome experience being in their presence, and it's not like, oh, I got to go load my gun, you know. But if you're selfish and you put in the call, guess who's going to contact you?
Yeah, the same people. You're going to send out that frequency.
Exactly, because the unselfish ETs are never going to contact you because they know what you're like.
Absolutely. Well, Gordon, I hate to rush you off, but we are done. We're out of time here. My station manager's going to start throwing rocks at me in a minute, so I got to run. But thank you so much for being with us. ZetaTalk.com, is that it?
Yeah, you should really go there, and that has the safe locations and everything you need to know. And the questions are taken on poleshift.ning.com, and once they're answered by the Zetas, then they're put on Zeta Talk. So there's 40,000 pages of questions from the public and the answers that have been going on for 20 years, courtesy of Nancy Leader, for free. You know, she's not in great health. She lives in a farmhouse in Wisconsin, and that's all she does. You know, she's not collecting money and becoming wealthy, so, you know, that isn't the point. The point is we're trying to save as many people as possible, and I'm trying to help her.
And I appreciate that, Gordon, and keep up the great work, please, and can't wait to get you back on back in August, and thank you again.
Okay, well, thanks, Mike.
All right, have a great night, my friend. All right, folks, there he goes, Gordon James Giannotto.
These levels of consciousness that you could, when you graduate from one level, you would go to the next level. So that's what's happening on Earth. Let's call the level that we're on now the third dimension. And the fourth dimension is complete separation. So on the third dimension, you have complete mixing of selfish and unselfish people. If you have an unselfish family, you can almost guarantee they're going to have a selfish kid. If you have a selfish family, you can almost guarantee they're going to have an unselfish kid. And it's really to let all the souls on both sides of that equation to get familiar with one another, which the unselfish souls have empathy and they care about everyone, and the selfish souls are narcissistic and think that only they are important and nobody else is important. Mm-hmm. So we've reached a point in this development where a third of the Earth, 30% of the Earth, is ready to graduate to a new level. So this new level is like, the average person lives 1,000 lifetimes. So if you live 1,000 lifetimes, they're not all on Earth. They may be, but they're not all on Earth guaranteed. You could have been on another planet, and what would your body look like on this other planet? And what would you be doing on this other planet? But what happens is that the average person lives about 1,000 lifetimes. It's sort of like a soap opera, you know, and you got different plot, different players, different places, different times, but it's all the same soap opera. And after about 1,000 lifetimes, you suddenly say, like Jack Nicholson, is this all there is? And when you ask that question, like a secret door that you never knew was there opens up in front of you, and you see there's a fork in the road, you can either choose to be completely selfish, which 10% of the population, if you can believe that, 10% of the population chooses to be 100% selfish. Or you can be unselfish, and only 30% of the population so far has chosen to organize all their intentions and behavior around unselfishness. But then, guess what? The next level, the fourth dimension, there's complete separation. In other words, there are planets that are completely unselfish. There isn't a selfish person on there, and there are other planets where everyone is selfish. And so that's what's about to happen is the people who have chosen to be unselfish are about to have a graduation, and the Earth is going to be a fourth dimensional planet. So you could say, well, yes, we're going to have the apocalypse, and a lot of people are going to die, and the world is going to be changed forever, and banks and governments and religions are going to fail, and the economy is going to fail, and bankers will be out on the street rolling up their sleeves to grow vegetables if they want to eat. And there's some attractiveness to that to some people. To other people think, well, I love my my Mercedes and my penthouse apartment, and I don't want to give that up. And if I had to give it up, I would die. So what happens to those people? Because you got 10% selfish, 30% unselfish, and you got 60% mostly selfish. Well, when everybody dies in this lifetime, and believe me, I don't care how you die or when you die, but you're going to die because you were born on a planet, you live on a planet, you're going to die on a planet. And 1,000 lifetimes is like nothing because, I mean, I think that you believe that we're eternal souls, right, Michael?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, so if you're eternal and you, let's say, come to Earth and you live, let's say you live to be 100 years old, how many lifetimes would you end up having before everything is over, completely? So what's going to happen is that the Earth is going to become an unselfish planet after pole shift. Not right after it, but as soon as it gets to about 90% unselfish, the whole planet with everyone on it is going to become unselfish, and the last of the selfish will die out because they won't be able to handle it. How are you going to go scam somebody and lie to somebody if they can see right through you and they know you're no good? They know you're service to self. They're not going to put up with it. So you have 10% are going to die and go to selfish planets, which I love Nancy Leader calls them prison planets, because every single person on the planet's as or more
far advanced in consciousness that it could do what it wants to do.
That's what's really interesting. You see, this is the process of, we're all creators in training because the creator broke itself up into trillions of pieces. It doesn't want any of them to fail. It doesn't want any of them. So all of them are eternal, and all of them have to learn from scratch. So the first things they do is to ensoul a rock. Like you might be born into where your body is a rock and you aren't moving anywhere, but you're just conscious that you're there, which is a big step. If you were unconscious before, now you're conscious that you're there. You feel the rhythm of the planet, the vibrations, you feel the weather and the temperature and the seasons, and you feel people walking on you, and you feel rocks crunching and moving, and you may break off of a mountain and roll down a valley into the sea. All these things can happen. Then the next step is plants. So then you learn to feel. So now you're not locked in position exactly. You can't move that far, but at least you can respond to your environment. And people everywhere know that if you're kind to your plants and your vegetables, you're going to get a better garden.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
And so they become conscious of feeling. Then when they're born as an animal, when they really reach the height of that, then they can be born as an animal. And the highest, most developed animals are the ones that are in contact with humans, like dogs, cats, horses. Any animal that has any contact with humans at all is a higher order animal that is ready to learn some new things. So that's where thinking develops. Now the animal can decide, well, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And then the next step for the animal is to make a choice. And people say, oh, animals don't know if they did something wrong. Well, when you tell your dog, why'd you poop on the floor? Just look at his face. You know that he knows he shouldn't have done that.
I'll tell you what, Gordon, real quick. We just did a video, and I'm going to put it out. We did a video outside today. There was this little stick bug. I don't know what you call it. It was like a little stick. And this thing, it had like an ET-looking head. And it was conscious that we were around it. I mean, when I moved, its head turned and it looked at me and it was watching everything I did. And we videotaped this because people say that bugs have no consciousness, and I disagree. This one did.
Yeah, well, of course. And you see, the highest rock, believe it or not, are the radioactive ones. And why? What makes them the highest development rocks? Because they're giving of themselves to help the environment. And the highest order plants can think. Like a Venus flytrap knows that a fly landed in it, and it can close its little claws around the fly and eat it. I mean, if that isn't, that's a rock beginning to feel, a plant beginning to think, and then you have the animals who are thinking, but their next step is spirituality, and that's where the human race was designed to be an opportunity for souls to begin to, basically, putting it in simple terms so everyone understands it, follow the golden rule. In other words, before you do anything, ask yourself, would you like it if somebody else did that to me? And if you wouldn't like it, then don't do it. Do you know how much better, forget all these religions in the world, if everyone just followed that simple thing, you know, and we've taken individuation to every possible development. So people, you know, they're like, well, he's not like me because he's black, or he's not like that because he believes in this, or he believes in that, or he looks like this, or he sounds like that. You know, this is the time. I mean, all those differences have been developed to the nth degree. This is the time for everyone on Earth to say, what do we have in common, not what makes us separate. And the reason why is because the Creator wants each part of the Creator, and that's what we are. We are creators in training. Everything around you, the molecules in the wall, the molecules in the plant, the molecules in your body, they all know that they're molecules in a wall, a plant, or a body. They know that, and they chose that. And they're all creators in training. You mean,
there we go. Gordon, welcome to Late Night in the Midlands. How are you?
hi, Michael. Are we on live right now?
We sure are, and I want to welcome you to the show. How you doing tonight?
Oh, thank you. Well, I'll tell you, I'm sweating like a pig because Maine is supposed to have 3 80-degree days a year, all in the third week in August, and we're on our like 45th day of 85 degrees.
Wow.
And we're just not used to it. If we wouldn't live in Maine if we thought it was going to be like steamy and hot. Oh my God.
Yeah, well, you know, it's been pretty damn muggy here too, but in South Carolina, I guess you expect that. But it has been torturous. The sun feels a lot hotter to me. I don't know how other people feel.
Oh my God. You know, it's been more than a year since I've been on your show, which
it's been too long.
Can you notice the sound quality's better? For some reason, my broadcast internet, which is from tower to tower to tower, went from 5 up to and 1 down to 10 up and 5 down.
Wow. Yeah, you sound a whole lot better. I mean, you've done pretty well in the past, but yeah, this sounds really good. So yeah, I appreciate that.
So it's a pleasure being back on here with you. Since when do you think the last time it was? Was it in the spring of last year, or was it even before that?
Well, one of my guests told me it's been 2 years, and I can't imagine it's been that long. Or one of my listeners, I'm sorry.
Yeah. It's been a while, and so much has happened. Oh my God! But Planet X is definitely getting closer. It's definitely separating away from the sun a bit. And the brightness, you're right. I mean, you can't even go outside and take a picture without having this, like, being spoiled by ultraviolet. And people go outside and they just burn to a crisp from ultraviolet. There's so much light, and it's a different color. And, you know, I'm glad that you noticed that because, you know, quite frankly, a lot of people don't notice anything.
Yeah, I definitely notice it. And being here in Carolina, I mean, when you go out there, I know back in 2008, you know, how it felt. It was hot here, but, you know, not burning like that. And now, if I go and stand in the sun, I could literally feel the sun burning my skin.
Right. And so I wanted to tell you, last August 1st, I was on Robert Pepino's show on Revolution Radio called The Whole Agenda. And he decided to go into the music business, and his father had a stroke, and he was taking care of his father. He said, "You're the perfect one to take over the show." So I've had my own show every Friday night at midnight for 2 hours on freedomslips.com. So if people want, you know, if they like what I'm going to be talking about tonight and they'd like to hear more of me, they can do that every Friday night at midnight Eastern time.
All right.
And Then I started my own YouTube channel. So now my shows are being posted by my producer, Swami, posting them on my YouTube channel, and that's growing a bit. And then I couldn't believe this. Have you ever heard of Josh Tolley?
Yes, I have heard of him. I'm not sure.
So he wrote me an email and he said, would you like to be on my show? We'd really like to have you and Janet on my show. And I thought, well, who in the hell is this guy? And I found out he's moderated presidential debates on CNN, and he's one of the top 100 business advisors in the world. And I said, do you know what we talk about? And he goes, oh my God, of course I know what you talk about. He goes, the number one question that my listeners, when I ask them, what would you like to learn more about, they say UFOs, extraterrestrials, and the future. So we can't wait for you to come on. So we went on a show on June 19th, and he posted it to his YouTube channel on June 23rd, and tonight we're going to reach 250,000 views.
Nice. That's fantastic.
Yeah, and that's a whole new audience. That's people that had no idea of the metaphysical or anything like that. I mean, in a sense, being on your show is like preaching to the choir, because you frequently have guests that discuss these subjects, but I figure he never did. He said this is the most unusual show I've ever done, so it's pretty interesting. So if you go to the Josh Tolley YouTube channel, you can listen to that interview, or you can go to, and that's with my wife Janet, and then or you can go to my YouTube channel, the Gordon James Gianni Noto YouTube channel.
And Gordon, that's great too, because that's what we need to do. We need to get to these audiences that have been under a trance. Really, I'm not saying that his audience has been, but I mean, like you got your CNN, your Fox News audiences, and so that's what I ask my listeners to do is, share this everywhere you can, because I want to reach more than just...
Now, every time you do a search for my name, Gordon James Gianni Noto, my YouTubes where I've done interviews with you, the LMNM interviews, are real high on the list of YouTubes that you can watch. So I've noticed that there's a growing, interest and association with the subject, and it's definitely. I mean, we're nearing the end days here, but I tell you this. I know that you made a comment about what you wanted to talk about tonight. We'll get to that in a minute. It's really interesting, but I tell you this, and you can mark my words. By Christmas, this will not be the same world we thought it was. It'll be so different that you can't even imagine what that's going to do to everybody. So, when I start talking about what's coming, people really ought to be listening, because pretty soon you're not going to have a change. Like if you live in Florida now, if the president announces this in September, that Planet X, the rogue planets in the solar system, and people should go read Zeta Talk, and they read Zeta Talk and find out Florida's going to be under 850 feet of water, you think you're going to be able to sell your house in Florida?
No, not at all. And Gordon, I want to let you know, I would like to touch on these other things at some point in the show, but I want to, wherever you think it's important, let's go there first. And I would have to assume you're talking about Planet X, aren't you?
Yes, definitely. It's been slowly approaching here since it came around the sun in 2003. And I've explained to your show before that it's because gravity pushes. That's why it's not going to slam into us and cause a big collision. And, like I say often, how many times have you heard astronomers meeting and saying, we've got to do something about this terrible problem of planets colliding and stars colliding? What can we do? You've never heard of a meeting like that, because they don't have to worry about it because gravity pushes. But it's a lie we've been told for 400 years, and everybody swallowed it except me. And then I found out I was probably right, and there may be a little component of pulling with gravity, but most of it's pushing. So, things are not what you've been told. They're not what you've been thinking. Now, you said that the subject of tonight's show is beings from other realms, extraterrestrials, taking over planet Earth. That was what you wanted to talk about, right?
I did want to know about that, because it was brought up by a listener that he heard you speaking about this, and I found it interesting. But Planet X as well. I mean, if we're going to be looking at some dangers in December, we certainly need to cover that too.
Well, exactly. And, I might have to come back to do another show real soon because I don't even think I can cover all the changes that have occurred. And let's say I haven't been on your show in the last 2 years. It's mind-boggling what's been going on. But I'll start with the creatures from another realm because I know that scares people. They're thinking, oh, my God, what is this guy talking about? We're doomed or we're not doomed or we have to go to war. We got to load our guns. I mean, what is this guy talking about and what is going on? But I'm going to start back at the beginning. The creator was sitting there. He hadn't created the universe at all. And he said, geez, I can do anything and I know everything. So what more is there? And then he thought, oh, if I wanted to go to my own next step, how could I do that? And he got this really interesting idea. Create a universe, divide himself, herself, itself into trillions of pieces, set each piece free in the universe to evolve without remembering that it was part of the creator, and then have these different dimensions in the selfish than they are.
Aren't we on a prison planet right now? I mean,
no. This is a third-dimensional planet where the unselfish and the selfish are allowed free will to do anything they want, and the mixing is where the education is. You see, to recognize. Because a lot of people put labels on people. Well, he's a narcissistic sociopath, or he's a narcissistic psychopath, or he's a criminal, or whatever. And to me, I've gradually learned over all this time that it really comes down to is a person oriented towards service to self or service to others. And that explains everything. Once I learn their orientation, then nothing surprises me. If somebody is service to self, and they're at the 100% service to self level, there's nothing they could do that would surprise me. Nothing. And so I don't need to know all these other little sub-labels from cultures and stuff like that. And so what's going to happen is when the people on Earth die, 10% are going to be reborn on planets where everyone is more selfish than they were. I mean, if you're a selfish person and you're thinking, well, I'm going to be in charge. Well, when you're reborn on this prison planet, guess what? You're not going to be in charge. You're going to be nothing, and you're not going to have any choice about it. And then the unselfish people are going to be reborn on Earth. That's the meaning of the meek will inherit the earth. And the other 60% that haven't made a decision either way, where are they going to go? Because the Earth is going to be a fourth dimensional planet, and they're not ready for the fourth dimension. So they're going to be reborn on other third dimensional planets as sea creatures, and that's a gift because they won't have feet or arms or hands, and they won't have possessions. And if there's anything where we all went wrong as a society, it's possessions. So this is really a gift to them, that in their next lifetime they might be born as an octopus, and as an octopus they only might live an hour before a shark eats them, right?
Right.
I mean, so people talk about, well, like there's certain religions, who I'm talking about. They say, well, when the judgment day comes, I'm going to be resurrected in this body,
Yeah.
They're like, oh, that's what I'm waiting for. That's why I've been a member of this religion. But think about it. Like, I look at my body, and okay, I'm pretty smart, but now I've injured my hips and I have to walk with crutches. Now I took too many aspirin for the pain, and it did not say on the aspirin bottle, warning can cause blindness. So now I got wet macular degeneration, so it's hard for me to read anything. I have this close focus telescope. I can read a word or two at a time. Well, I used to read a 200-page book in 20 minutes. So, but luckily I have a sharp mind. But whether I would want this body to be resurrected and live in it forever? No. I mean, when you go to the car dealer and you have a 1958 Studebaker, do you want to buy a new 1958 Studebaker? No, it's 2015, and the 2016 models are about to come out. You want to go buy the best car you can afford. Right. And you don't want to buy some old wreck of, that's the technology's passed it by. So that's what your body is. Your body is like you getting into a car. Your soul gets into your body to express itself. Well, about a third of the Earth has reached a point where they're beyond that. Like, I've taught myself telepathy. I actually contact aliens to help other people, and then they say, "You're not going to believe this, but some Zetas came into the room, and I saw them, and they were trying to work on my leg, or whatever it is they say." And they say, "Did you have anything to do with that?" And I said, "Well, I did ask them," and I asked them like an hour before they do that, and then these people are calling me up and going, "You're never going to believe what just happened to me." And I said, "I will, because they're unselfish people. I'm asking not for myself, but for other people, and their help." So there's a lot going on here, you see.
And Gordon, I often thought that plants and maybe sea animals were of a higher consciousness because they didn't have the arms, the legs, and all those things, and maybe a plant don't have to move because it's so